All right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jerica Knox, and I serve as board chair for Optimism. And on behalf of Optimism, we would like to welcome you all to Beyond Georgetown County, your introduction into the foreign world. So please bear with us as this is our first virtual conference, and so we're hoping that there will be minor or little to no technical difficulties, and hopefully it's a smooth ride. So I am just going to briefly share the session descriptions for both today and tomorrow, and then pass the mic along to Ms. Chapman. So for today, we have our time in Sierra Leone, West Africa, a Peace Corps volunteer panel where U.S. Peace Corps service members or former service members will recount their time in the West African nation of Sierra Leone. And then we have French 101, the basics, where high school French instructor, Mr. Pierre Johnson, presents a brief lesson on elementary French. And then we have the United States Foreign Service, words from Ms. Claire Polk, U.S. diplomat in Jamaica, where she will introduce the audience to foreign diplomacy, what it means to be a diplomat, and the importance of U.S. foreign policy. Tomorrow we have introduction of the Middle East with Mr. Reggie Bradford, where he talks about his time as a teacher in Abu Dhabi, as well as just discussing his time in the Middle East and his understanding of the Arab world. And then we have the world and consumerism, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And in this session, we will shed a light on how Western consumerism can potentially endanger the lives of those in poor nations who work in dangerous conditions to extract minerals. And then we have my double identity. And this is where panelists will discuss what it means to possess a double identity due to having their roots in two different nations. And then finally, last but not least, we will have COVID-19 and the nature of viruses, which will be a discussion with Dr. Paula Trackman, a virologist, and she will come to discuss what viruses are, how they mutate, and how they can ultimately transform into epidemics and pandemics. Ms. Chapman?
Good morning. Good morning, Georgetown, Horry, Williamsburg, wherever you are this morning. Good morning, and we welcome you, and we thank you for tuning in with us. Serving over 8,000 youth since the ordination of our organization in 2010, Optimism has remained true to our mission, working to change the lives of young people through education, mentoring, prevention, and leadership programs. In times like this, times that we now recognize what is our new normal, we will continue to motivate and educate our children. We are elated this morning that you have continued that you are with us and helping us to continue the process. We are excited about our virtual meeting, and we are excited about this first virtual conference, Beyond Georgetown County, beyond the county where you reside, your introduction to the foreign world. A two-day conference filled with exciting and memorable events with enlightening collaborative sessions. We assure you that we will not allow a single boring moment to enter this conference. Our amazing, extraordinary speakers and panelists were sure to keep you energized for the entire 2 days. Over the next 2 days, you will be introduced to various musical traditions, participate in conversations about cultural sensitivity, meet an American diplomat, engage in dialogue with a United States foreign officer, learn more about what our viruses and how they convert to the global pandemics, and so much more. It is Optimism's hope that this new and unique opportunity to learn virtually will be engraved in your memories forever. We are so delightful to have you join us this morning. Thank you for attending, and we want you to enjoy and have a great day.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning, and again, I'd like to say thank you all for joining us for our very first virtual conference. My name is Denzon, and I serve as Optimism Chair of Program Planning and Development. We're excited to have you participate in such a unique event. Your presence here today highlights your commitment to our globalized world. Globalized, integrated. I'm sure that you've heard these terms before. Really, for the past few decades, policymakers and politicians alike have been discussing without end the need to prepare America for a more globalized world. Yet, just what does that mean? When we say globalized, we are highlighting a few things. Contrary to popular belief, globalization is not a 20th nor a 21st century phenomenon. Our world has been globalized since the first contacts among different people groups. From those contacts with a system of trade and cultural exchange, where peoples benefited from the know-how and goods of others, and language learning was reciprocated in order to facilitate interaction. As the world industrialized and unfortunately colonization became a norm, the world will continue to transform as capitalism flourished, borders were pried open, and international trade satisfied the needs of emerging societies that consumed more. Equally, what is not new is the political reaction to the effects of globalization. What we're seeing today in politics across the world, from the United States to Europe, the protectionism, the nationalism, the xenophobia, the politician who screamed that the citizens should remain inward looking, that should alarm us all. And that is why we're here. We're here to introduce to both teenagers and grown folk alike of Georgetown County and along the Grand Strand to not only the importance of our world and foreign affairs, but to the necessity, the urgency of preparation for the future. The future is global and will remain so. Those of us at Optimism feel it our duty to ask, how do we make young South Carolinians more competitive on a global scale? Beyond Georgetown seeks to inspire someone to learn that second language, to study the hard sciences, and become, perhaps, a virologist. Pursue a degree in public health. We hope that some of you walk away inspired to become a diplomat. We equally hope that you all walk away more culturally sensitive and understanding. But above all, we pray that you walk away ready to assume your responsibilities as a global citizen. Again, we thank you for coming, and we hope that you enjoy this experience. And now, as we get things started, we will introduce you all to our moderator for the day. She was gracious enough to accept our request to come and use her unique voice. We welcome Miss April Garner. She is the host of the network found in Conway, South Carolina, so she is also local. Miss April, we thank you for being here, and we welcome you.
Thank you so much, Denzon and Denise, Jerica. I really do appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this virtual conference. I was so excited to find out about the virtual conference and of course, being asked to be a part of it. It really aligns with what I do as far as my work is concerned. And I know you mentioned the network. However, I'm also a career services director with Horry Georgetown Technical College. And so as you talk about globalization and preparing our youth for the future, it makes sense because of the fact that you're right, the competitive nature of our global economies, our global scales across the world means that everyone has to think now about how to prepare for the future, because the future is now. This pandemic has definitely uncovered a lot of things that appear to be flaws across our global systems. And as long as we learn from what's happening now, we'll be able to connect the dots globally and create some synergies that will hopefully reshape the world. And so what you all are doing with the young people is absolutely extraordinary today. Thank you so much for having me as a part of this.
We thank you. We look forward to an exciting day.
Absolutely. So I have been asked to moderate the panel, and I'm going to start with introductions of our panelists. I'll also be able to moderate any questions from our viewers. We'll ask the questions to our panelists and allow them time to respond and also share any comments that are coming from any of our viewers as we go through the conference this morning. I don't know if you want to introduce Ms. Piper, who just came in, but I will start with her introduction. So I'm going to share my screen in just a moment, and then I will get back to our Q&A. Okay, so our first panelist is Piper O'Keefe. Piper O'Keefe is originally from Fleetwood, Pennsylvania. After graduating from Gettysburg College in 2017 with a political science and globalization studies double major and German minor, she served for 3 years with the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone. She spent the first 2 years working in English education with a rural school, and then a third year working with Peace Corps administration, excuse me, and staff on improving programming, training, and volunteer support. Next month, she will start her Master of Public Policy in Global Affairs at Yale University's Jackson Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, Piper O'Keefe.
Hi, everyone.
We also have with us Daniel A. Duvall. Daniel was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, but currently resides in Bushkill, Pennsylvania with his parents and younger brother. He has his bachelor's in English and Communications from the SUNY College at Brookport and is currently working toward his MFA in Seton Hill's Writing Popular Fiction program. Good morning, Daniel.
Hi, everyone.
Morning.
We also have with us, of course, Denzel Windley. Denzon is from Georgetown, South Carolina. Following his graduation from the University of South Carolina, Columbia, with a degree in international studies, he would go on to serve for nearly 2 years in Sierra Leone with the Peace Corps. Following his service in Sierra Leone, he would go on to teach English outside of Paris, France, for 8 months. Next month, Denzon will begin work on his Master's of Global Policy at UT Austin's LBJ School of Public Policy. Hi again, Denzon. We also have Anna M.A. Anna is a first-generation Nigerian American born and raised in Southern California. Anna received her BA in African American Studies and Biology at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. She served with the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone as a community health educator for 2 years and is now working with an NGO based in central Haiti. Anna is also now pursuing a master's in public health at Emory University in Atlanta. Joining us today as well is Kate Lawrenson. Kate grew up in Connecticut, where she fostered a strong sense of service and civic responsibility from her family and school community. She received a BA in International Affairs with a focus on Africa and the Middle East from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Kate served as a health volunteer in Northern Sierra Leone, where she worked with community members to design community-based programs centered on behavior change for malaria, hygiene, and sanitation and nutrition. Since leaving Peace Corps, Kate has been working for One Village Partners, a small NGO doing community-led development in Eastern Sierra Leone. We also have with us Mr. Pierre Johnson. Pierre is a native of Conway, South Carolina. As a result of his parents having been stationed in Supreme Headquarters Allied Power Europe, Pierre was born in Belgium, where French is an official language. Following his graduation from South Carolina State University, Pierre would serve as an English teacher in French before deciding to return to the U.S. to teach French. Pierre is married to his wife, whom we met in France, and is the proud father of 2 small girls. Pierre currently teaches French at Palm Beach Central High School in Wellington, Florida. Claire Polk, U.S. Foreign Service Officer. Claire joined the State Department in 2018 as a public diplomacy officer. She's assigned to Jamaica as a consular officer and is currently completing a domestic detail in the Operations Center's Office of Crisis Management and Strategy. Prior to joining the diplomatic corps, she worked as a journalist covering economic development and education policy for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, then at Reuters in Washington, D.C. as a reporting fellow. She also taught journalism in a magnet program sponsored by the Poynter Institute in St. Petersburg, Florida. She received her BS in newspaper journalism with concentrations in African American history and global security from Florida A&M University, as well as her MA in International Communication from American University School of International Service in Washington. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for today's event. the Bunnell Foundation, Sound Off, 98.5 KISS FM, Georgetown Innovation Center, the Network, and Polished Public Relations Consulting. Now that we've had our formal introduction of the panelists, I'd like to begin our Q&A with just a few questions. And, as I moderate through the questions, if there's anyone who wants to chime in, please do so. If you have an immediate response, or, if you feel that you want to handle the question individually, just raise your hand and I will definitely call your name and allow you to do so. So tell us, why did you choose to join the Peace Corps? Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to make a little note. So unfortunately, Kate would not be able to join us this morning. She had a conflict with the meeting. She is in Sierra Leone. She is 4 hours ahead, so she will not be able to come. But again, Daniel, Piper, Anna, I thank each and every one of you for joining today, because again, we're just here to really recount our crazy time in Sierra Leone. So for me personally, I wanted to join the Peace Corps because I wanted to see the world. Another goal of mine since I was in middle school, I wanted to live in Africa. And so when I applied to the Peace Corps, they gave us 3 options: which country you would like to go into, with the caveat being you cannot serve in any developed countries. And so I actually chose Rwanda, the Comoros, which is in the Indian Ocean, and the third option was anywhere needed. So they could have placed me anywhere in the world, but they placed me in Sierra Leone. And so honestly, I don't regret my decision, as evidenced by the friendships that we have to this day. So yeah, I would say that's why I decided to join Peace Corps. Daniel.
Well, Daniel, before you get started, there was a comment that was posted saying that someone would be interested in knowing what the Peace Corps is. So yeah, would you all start with at least an explanation of what the Peace Corps is all about?
Yeah, sure. So with the Peace Corps, basically you get American volunteers who are sent across, I think, 60 countries. It depends on how many countries they have for the year. And basically we're given 2 years to volunteer in one of the 6 sectors that they have. So for me, I volunteered in the education sector. So I was actually a teacher where I was. And yeah, and you're given a chance to, live with the host family, learn a new language if it's not one you've already been taught as a child. And yeah, you put in a community where you get to live like the locals to the best of their ability, and just work with people who have different experiences, and you get to learn a lot about yourself and learn a lot about a different culture. And then the goal is that you bring your knowledge back to the States and teach people in America about that culture you were just in, and also teach people in the country they were just in about Americans, and kind of break those stereotypes or whatever ideas they may have had, and just better understand. It's a nice cross-cultural connection and relationship. But as for me, the reason why I joined the Peace Corps was because my junior year of college, I took a class called Protest of Public Opinion. And basically it discussed all these social, economic, and political issues happening around the world. And it was really tough to sit in that class every day because I just kept witnessing all these problems. But I kept asking my teacher, so what do we do? How do we fix it? What's the next step? And she basically just kept telling us, that's why we're having this class, because we don't necessarily know. There's not necessarily one answer. We're hoping to inspire the youth that will be the change, so that they will go out there and make those changes. And we had a Peace Corps recruiter come, I think the year prior to that, who always had back in my mind that I wanted to join the Peace Corps. And so after that class, I was like, when I finish college, that's going to be my goal, that I'm going to go out and do something. I wanted to go out and go to another country and try, not to have this savior complex, but to do my part. I wanted a volunteer opportunity to help someone other than myself, and I wanted something selfless and that would be benefiting someone else.
I can go next. I was also an education volunteer like Denzon and Daniel. So I had first heard about the Peace Corps when I was in high school. I went to some leadership conference thing, and one of our speakers there was an ambassador, but he spent his whole 2-hour time talking about his service in the Peace Corps, despite the fact he had served as an ambassador in like 15 different countries, done all these amazing things. He only talked about the Peace Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obvious passion for it had stuck with him for the 30 years after he had been a Peace Corps volunteer. And so I was interested in it since then. And then when I got to college, I studied abroad, and I realized that a big thing we can do as individuals from America is show the rest of the world that we're listening and that we care. So Peace Corps' main mission is global peace and friendship, which is, obviously a very set mission, but that's really what I valued most about my Peace Corps service, being able to create those friendships despite the ocean between us now. So yeah, in college, after studying abroad, I just realized that I wanted to be in a place where my job would be just listening to people, learning from a different perspective, learning from a different culture. And I also am pretty passionate about women's rights. And at the time, Peace Corps had a Let Girls Learn initiative, which was just furthering girls' education. So that's what motivated me to apply and catch me in it when I was there.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure that each of you probably had your own unique experiences, especially as you compared it to the cultures that you grew up in or had always traditionally been exposed to. So what was your first impression of Sierra Leone? Denzon smiling.
I don't think Anna's gone yet.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay, Anna. Anna's a panelist as well, sure enough. Go ahead, Anna.
I can tie both. And so for me, I actually got my first experience with Peace Corps as an ambassador during undergrad. So my junior and senior year, essentially an internship. And I attended a university in Los Angeles. And so they didn't really have much of a Peace Corps presence in the Western, in the West Coast. And so it was a really interesting experience just to get to know more about the organization and also sort of, explain to other students who were looking for postgraduate service opportunities. And so for me, my background was always in community organizing and working at the community level. And so similar to Denzon, I had always was like, I'm going to live on the continent and have that experience. And so myself being Nigerian American and saying, hey guys, I'm going to Sierra Leone, my family was like, why? Can't you go back to Nigeria? Why not Ghana? And so just the stereotypes surrounding, West Africa and specifically Sierra Leone following the Ebola pandemic that had happened. But I was really more so inspired to just be able to get some hands-on experience and, just increase my awareness and knowledge of the continent. And so I ended up being a health volunteer there for 2 years. And really just, like everyone said, being integrated into society, learning about the language. And even though there are a lot of similarities with my own background, just being immersed in a whole different environment. So I pretty much loved my experience, but I think as soon as I got there, I remember not even getting to Sierra Leone, but getting to staging in DC and being like, okay, this is real. This is real, and we're about to leave. But even just arriving in Freetown, I just felt like, all right, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of things to compare. So, I always felt close to home.
Okay, so Anna's done a good job of actually segueing us into that question. And so I'm going to go back to you, though, for just a little bit more detail. When you said similarities, what were those similarities between home and Sierra Leone?
Well, regionally, it's all in the Western Hemisphere. Sierra Leone and Nigeria were former British colonies. So the basic language, even though Sierra Leone is Creole, but it's an offset of English. And that was similar to Nigeria. And just being there and being presenting as a Black female, but then also they're like, where are you from? Who are you? And being like, well, I'm Nigerian. They're like, what? We love Nigerians. We play Nigerian music. We have Nigerian fabrics. So I really honestly felt like I was home, So it wasn't, the experience itself, a Peace Corps experience, was completely different from what I had expected. Just, 10 weeks of living with a host family and really, really living in the rural level and working in rural health. But I think culturally, that's what kept me there, because I didn't feel super alienated throughout my service.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I can imagine that it probably was different for Piper, Denzon, or Daniel in comparison. So who wants to kind of give us their first impression? Let's start with Piper.
Okay. So I guess when we first got to country, we lived with host families during our training. And on the first night I was living with my host family, it was like an incredibly overwhelming day because it takes about 24 hours of travel to get there. And once you get to the airport, it's still another 2 hours driving to our training city. And then after that, Peace Corps had a full day of us like learning survival language and how to wash using a bucket bath and everything we need to know for those first 24 hours. And it was just absolutely exhausting. But then after all of that, we had our time where we met our homestay families. And to do it, they just had us with a slip of paper that had the name of the family who we would be living with. So one of my first impressions where I wasn't entirely overwhelmed of Sierra Leone was walking around with this slip of paper, like just saying the name really quietly, but like, Mamadi Touré, Mamadi Touré. And then this kid runs up to me, he looks at it and he yells, Mamadi Touré. And my host mom comes over to me after that. So it kind of just gave me a good first impression of Sierra Leonean culture, where there's always someone to lend you a helping hand. You never have to do anything by yourself, which is very counter to often the individualistic tendencies that are fostered in American society.
Daniel, Denzon.
I'll go next. You can kind of go backwards.
Okay.
So for me, it's funny because whenever I do something new, I tend to work in extremes. I either overthink it to the point where I psych myself out, or I just dive right in and I like cry alone in my room later when no one's around. So this was a situation where I just dived right in, and from staging, in DC down to meeting my host family, I just learned to take everything at face value. And I said, I'm going to process this when I'm alone and it's time to go to bed, but I'm just going to like put my brave face on and enjoy it. And everyone was so kind, everyone was so helpful, and we were all going through it together. So I didn't feel like everyone felt the same way I did for the most part. And I felt really supported. And same when I met my host family, I was overwhelmed at the thought of, we had maybe an hour or so of language practice. And so I had to learn how to ask someone, what their name was and, which family I was going to be in. And I remember just like my host family being incredibly kind. And we, sat down and we ate together. That was one of the big things that we had. It was, during this little ceremony, they had these huge plates and we ate, with our hands for the first time. And it was just such a new cultural experience, and everyone was in it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna eat with my hands, and I'm gonna sit with this family and chat. And it was a good time. But yeah, it was definitely one of the kind of things that you just need to learn to take at face value and just enjoy it for what it is at that moment.
Really, I was experiencing a mix of emotions because, like Piper, once we had to search for our family, my family was actually confused because there was 2 people with the same name, and so I was like Bangura, and I got this first gentleman, and then he was like, no, I already have someone, and so I was about to go home with him still until my host father comes up to me. He was like, no, this is mine. And so that's when we went to the house. But the first night in Sierra Leone, I wasn't afraid of anything. I was more so intrigued. But I will say I was hot. I remember being incredibly hot, and not only was the house hot, but they also fed us one of the dish that they eat is called pasas. So it's like any form of really that's like how would you describe it, guys? Like pounded. Some of it's pounded or right. But it's incredibly good. Always served with rice and fish. And the first time I ate it, I loved it. But there was so much pepper because Sierra Leoneans love pepper. What's it called? Pepe. And
so hot, like a green pepper, or is it more like a black pepper?
How would you guys describe it? It's like a little pepper. How would you
like a hot chili.
Like a hot chili pepper. Okay.
Yeah, pounded up and.
And so host mom, she put a bunch of it in, and I was just sitting there. It was 9 o'clock at night, and I was sitting eating. I was like, whew, are you guys hot? But you know, they were very welcoming, and it really set the tone for Sierra Leone as a whole, because Sierra Leoneans, they're just very welcoming people, very gracious people, and just overall sweet. So my first impressions, I wasn't nervous at all. I would say I was just intrigued.
All right. You guys have kind of encompassed the next two questions, but if you want to add any more detail, that would be great. The climate change, how did you adapt to the climate change? And then, of course, how was it living with your host families?
I can go first.
Okay, go ahead, Piper. Mm-hmm.
So it was so hot and humid when we first got there. I think all of us probably sweat like 5 gallons of water a day for the first week or so. But then it's pretty amazing because your body adjusts to it eventually. Like I just recently came home from Sierra Leone. I came back in March and I am still freezing in American weather. I live in Pennsylvania here in America, and it is way too cold, even in the summer. So I don't know, your body gets used to the temperature where you are. And what was the other question?
How was it living with your host family?
Okay. It was good in some ways. Like it was really nice having a family who could teach me the language, who could teach me how to cook in Sierra Leone, how to do everything. And it was nice having my first kind of like built-in friends in Sierra Leone, because my host siblings, my host mom, everyone, they just, you know, wanted to get to know you, and I wanted to get to know them, despite the fact my language skills were not there yet. And actually for my 3rd year of service, because I stayed for 1 more year, I moved back to our training city. So my host family was still kind of like my friends for my last year. I didn't live that close to them. It was like a 30-minute walk away. But it was really nice knowing I had family on the other side of the city that I could walk to anytime I wanted a warm plate of rice. And, you know, I was glad when I moved to my first site to have have things under my own control, like be able to cook what I wanted when I wanted it. But yeah, it was a great way to start out the experience.
Awesome.
I'm still jealous that you got to go back to live in Port Loco, because if I could live in any city, it would probably be Freetown or Port Loco.
Port Loco is great. Everyone says it's horrible, but it's not. I love it.
Port Loco. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, as we discussed, you know, depending on your sex, we have to be honest, depending on your male or woman.
And I'm white, obviously, so that, you know.
Give us a little context about what you're talking about.
So in Sierra Leone, you know, I don't know how to describe it. Matter of fact, let me refer to one of the 2 women. So ladies, how was it being women in Sierra Leone? What was your impression? You would better explain it than I would.
I mean, the gender roles and the gender dynamic is very much so alive. I think even more so because of the different religions that are prevalent there. So you have an equal mix of Muslim and Christianity. And so the gender roles are definitely there. The patriarchy is very much alive. Personally, for me, I didn't have any direct issues. I think it was more so of how I mentioned how I present. So they either automatically assume that I'm also Sierra Leonean until I speak. And then you sort of have that privilege of, oh, well, you're an American, so we'll definitely treat you with that basic level of respect. But yeah, I think you definitely have to just be mindful of the cultural cues before just being like, you know, having a strong presence, so to speak. But yeah.
Yeah, and I had the added privilege of being white while I was there too, which meant that a lot of the harassment that some Sierra Leonean women themselves would face, I would have never faced it. Just because as a white woman, I was seen elevated almost to the same respect that was automatically given to a man. But at the same time, like it's very direct. Like if you don't get the language right away, people are going to keep yelling at you until you get it. And so I think that harassment at the beginning especially can be very bad for some other volunteers, which is why they didn't like Port Loco, our training city, too much. Just because as you're getting used to another culture, of course, there's going to be barriers. And so people blamed it on the city we are living in as opposed to their own selves adjusting to the new culture.
Right.
I think it's interesting that you brought in the the racial disparity, and I think that, as we experience these types of things in the United States, it's kind of hard for us to imagine how it all happens, in other parts of the globe. But, I think that's a very important piece to include whenever you're trying to prepare young people, adults, whoever, for working in other countries, that there may be some type of disparities that exist, and just like Anna says, preparing for that cultural shift, or that cultural difference. So now let's talk about the job. Okay, how easy or difficult was the transition into the job?
Well,
Can I go?
Yes, you can go.
As a health volunteer, I definitely now know that there was so much pressure that was applied to our cohort that we weren't even expecting. And what I mean by that is, if you can imagine, the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone had been in place since the beginning of the Peace Corps. It was one of the first countries that President Kennedy had, elected to, that Sierra Leone and President Kennedy at the time had agreed to have a Peace Corps be present there. And with the Civil War happening in Sierra Leone, they obviously had to stop programs. And then obviously with the Ebola pandemic, they had to stop programs. So essentially there wasn't a health cohort for over 20 years before us arriving. And having that in mind, I was like, all right, well, what exactly are we going to get into? A lot of, my health cohort and Kate involved had different levels of expertise. And, we're all college graduates, but of different, levels, some recent grads like myself, some, years into their professional careers. And so the expectation of, all right, we're here, what are we going to be doing, wasn't really laid out until, training, essentially. And I think it depends from person to person. But I think for me, once I got to site and being introduced as a Peace Corps volunteer, they're like, all right, well, here's the hospital, let's get to work. And I'm like, wait a second. My training was all at the community level to integrate, learn the language, and start having conversations. And so the expectations specifically with the organization of Peace Corps, when it comes to what sort of technical skills are you going to be having or expected to have, I definitely think moving forward should have been explicitly stated. That way the expectations for myself and my cohort members and the communities that we were working in would have been more so matched, because I think that there was that expectation of, you're coming in here, you're going to fix all our problems, and everything in between that's not health related, just because there's this notion of, oh, this American is coming in, hallelujah, she's going to save the world.
money.
Whereas what we're literally equipped with as Peace Corps volunteers is do no harm, integrate with the community, and
Some more of the cultural, interpersonal,
Right. So we had to just make do.
And you talked about the technical part of it. What were some of the technical skills that you had to, I guess, kind of put into play right away in your particular role? Or at least attempt to put into play?
I think the training did do a lot of explaining frameworks. We had a lot of frameworks as far as like the different levels of the clinics that are present in Sierra Leone, as far as like what are the levels or the hierarchy, I should say, when it comes to working in rural healthcare, sort of the referral system that we see with, people who are looking for specific health services, from the local level to the government level, to how does that impact, the Ministry of Health and Sanitation. But as far as our role as Peace Corps, we were the intermediate of, we were said to be the intermediate of community and government. But I think that should have been.
She's buffering.
Community organizing and doing outreach, and like, I'm a trained engineer, I have all these credentials, and my abilities, I feel like my potential isn't necessarily being utilized in the best space for this, so.
Okay. All right. Who else wants to talk about their transition? What was it like?
Well, I can say for the education volunteers here, each of our schools were different. So I was out in I believe it's the east. I was in a town called Shibuya. And so my classes numbered 50, 60 kids per class. And so when I first got there, the first day of school, I was introduced very quickly to how school is ran in Sierra Leone, because in Sierra Leone, parents had to pay school fees. The new president came in 2018 and was like, you don't have to pay school fees anymore. Piper, I don't know how true that's held, but okay, good. So when we got there, the kids had to pay school fees. If you didn't pay school fees, you were rounded up and you were sent home. And so it was a fiasco the first 3 weeks at my school because, you know, the teachers were not playing about their money. But transitioning, you know, I believe in the beginning, the kids were very respectful. It was only as things went along, and they, you know, they were trying to get acclimated with the American accent, because a lot of kids would tell me, "Oh, Mr. Denzel, I like the British accent better, the British English accent better." And so there were challenges, them trying to understand my accent, me trying to, you know, understand and learn the Creole. And since I was out in the East where they speak Mende, Mende is the dominant language out there. And honestly, I didn't learn much Mende because it was just too hard for me. But the Creole I was all right with. But once we got over those hurdles, it was fine for a few months. As far as the living conditions, I'm blessed because I had, this is significant, and my cohort knows why. I had an indoor toilet. In Sierra Leone, most of them use latrines, pit latrines.
Wow, okay.
Denzon was not going to use a pit latrine. I refused. And so I'm sorry. I had a toilet, so it's like my house, it was hot. A lot of volunteers, when they came into my house, they were always complaining about the heat, and it was true. But I was comfortable in a sense because the priest, I lived next to the Catholic mission. He hired a night guard to watch the school grounds to make sure that the American was okay. I had an auntie who was cooking for me every day. So integration the first few months, school-wise, it got there, and then socially, it was fine for me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
I can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So kind of like what Denzon and Anna both touched on, the Peace Corps job is two-tiered. Like it's the work we're doing at schools or in the hospital, but then it's also integrating into the community. And I think each volunteer kind of finds which one is easier for them and which one is harder. And it definitely depends on which site you're placed in and if they've had Peace Corps volunteers in the past and what the reputation of that Peace Corps volunteer in the past was. So like at my school, they had Peace Corps volunteers who had taught there in the past, and they had taught different subjects than me, which was actually kind of nice because it meant when I went in and wanted to teach English, I was able to do what I knew I was able, as opposed to living up to some standards of someone else before me, which was a struggle that a lot of other Peace Corps volunteers faced, where someone in their school had maybe been a trained science teacher back in the US. And then they came in having just graduated with a biology degree and were kind of struggling to figure out how to teach it. And they were compared to this volunteer before them who had been the perfect teacher. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that challenge, which was really nice. And so Denza had said that school fees didn't exist before, or it did exist. So in my time in Sierra Leone, I kind of saw the transition from our first year, school fees were horrible. I mean, all of us had our students driven out of our classroom during exams, sent home, beat in front of the school sometimes. But then with the new president, he did come with the promise of free education. And it honestly, like, it pretty much happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, the payment of teachers is still not ideal, and coronavirus has really messed up the economy in Sierra Leone in really devastating ways. Mm-hmm. But they're really trying, and it was really inspirational to see that change while I was there. But then Denzon kind of touched on the languages that are spoken. So just to explain that a little bit more, in Sierra Leone, there's 12 different major tribes, and each of them has their own language. And so Sierra Leone as a country is all of those tribes united. And before they lived in separate places, but now because it's one country, people are everywhere. But certain regions of the countries are dominant for those tribes. So I think all three of them actually lived in Mende dominant areas, whereas I lived in a Temne dominant land, and the best land. But so most students that they spoke Temne first in my area, and Temne it's its own language. It's not like English.
Can you
like
speak Temne?
Pretty well, yeah.
Okay.
I can speak it.
Give us some. Let's hear it.
Go,
Okay.
Pipe, go.
Indire. What do you want me to say?
I was going to say, just say, how are you today, or something like that.
Indire. Toki Indira. To Indira.
Is it Tonto Kuru?
Tanto Kuru, which means like thanks be to God. So it's a really cool language, and I loved learning it, and everyone loved teaching me.
How hard was it to catch on to the language?
So hard. So
you pretty much were studying and I guess listening and studying as you were going along, pretty much.
Yeah, and it was kind of neat because it was learning through hearing. People don't really learn how to write that language because in the school system they're taught to read and write in English, which is a whole nother problem. But
dang, it's like mind blowing.
Right.
Colonialism, not good. But it was really cool to be able to learn a language by listening to it. So at times I kind of felt like a small child, how they slowly obtain language just because they hear people talking it all the time. After about a year, you can probably talk about what a 2-year-old can talk. You just learn by listening.
Interesting.
But because most of our students, that was their first language. So they learned their tribal language first growing up because that's what, their friends and family spoke in their household. And then when they go to primary school, so elementary school, that's when most kids in the more rural areas are first taught Creole, which is like what Anna was talking about, is more similar to English. Like if you wanted to say, I am going to the market, I go na market. Like it's
Is it similar to our Gullah?
Because Miss April, groups from Charleston do go to Sierra Leone because they tend to say the Gullah Geechee folk descended from the Mendes. So in a sense, yes, because the Creole people were taken back. Well, they were former slaves from North America, and I believe some from the Caribbean. They were taken back to form the colony of Freetown. So that's how they speak Creole. And so they are, I tended to tell them, we are cousins in a sense. So I would say yes.
That's interesting. Because someone pointed out that, there are historical African-American links to the region. And so, it's interesting to see that connectivity there. Yeah. So Daniel, the mind blown. What did you want to add to this?
Okay. I'm glad that Piper brought it up. So I just want to say, first off, my only teaching experience prior to going to Sierra Leone was that I was an occasional substitute teacher when I was in college. And then I was a camp counselor for 3 consecutive summers. And my campers were 6 to, I want to say 8 or 9. So then going and becoming a teacher, and for my own classroom, not even, a co-teacher in Sierra Leone, I was working with middle school students. I had 3 classrooms of my own, and the largest classroom had 85 students, and the smallest had 70 students. And I could feel the difference within that classroom of 70 students. Like, oh, wow, there are 15 less students in this room. I can actually breathe. I can walk around this room. But one of the bigger challenges was that by the second year of teaching in our service, the government had passed along these like teaching manuals for language arts classes and for math classes. And so they're kind of like scripted, where you would, open to a page and it's like a whole lesson for the day. And it'll literally say, say this first, give them time to do this activity, have it written on the board, and just kind of read along and wait for their response. And in theory, it sounds great. It sounds awesome. But when you realize the tier in which the manual thinks the students are on and what they should be on, and then the reality of where the students on, it's so far. And it killed me every day to go into the class, and then I'd talk to them and I'd ask them a question in English. I tried. I wasn't the best with Mende. I actually had assigned one student in each class to be, I called them my Robins, like I was Batman, they'd be my Robin, and they would be my translator. So I would say something in Creole or in English, and then they would say it back in Mende or whatever language would help the students understand better. So that helped. But still, it just, it was so hard to try to ask them a question, and then like you'd wait for the response time, and everyone was either too afraid because they didn't want to be embarrassed that they didn't know the answer, or they genuinely didn't know. So they would just sit there hoping that I would give it and then move on. And it just hurt for
Very, sounds
nearly
like it was
2 years.
very challenging, and not unlike the way our students respond to teachers in the
Yeah.
classroom. But yours, but with your experiences, more about that cultural difference and not wanting to seem so disconnected. So you guys touched upon some of the challenges you had in terms of the language barriers and things that you had to do there as well. Quickly, give us a fond memory, Anna, a fond memory.
I have so many. Well, I say my greatest takeaway was really diving into and really understanding at least a piece of some of the major health issues going on in Sierra Leone. So for anyone that doesn't know, Sierra Leone has the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. And stepping into that environment of, like I said, working in a rural health clinic facility and literally seeing the day-to-day ins and outs of caregivers, clinicians, midwives, I ended up bonding with a group of
She had a beautiful
She's
still
buffering
shots.
again. Yeah.
birthdays as a man with them. They were just well-respected older women of the society who were just so vibrant and just so skilled at their work. And I really advocated for them to at least, feel recognized in their work that they were doing. At the same time, there was a birth center that was funded by a group of nurses out in Minnesota, and they had just finished building the birth center at my site right around 2018. And so seeing them transition to be able to have some hands-on technical training was really the greatest takeaway for me professionally, and getting into public health now and working more with maternal health. But I just remember everything came with singing and dancing at the clinic, and just really being appreciative for being able to, be exposed to that.
All right. Piper?
I have so many good memories. My answer is going to be a lot less professionally based than Anna's was. But I think my favorite memory was in in February, I didn't know it was my last month in Sierra Leone because we were evacuated for coronavirus. But one of my best friends, Binta, it was her birthday, the day after Valentine's Day. And the whole week she had been talking about her birthday, hyping it up and everything else, trying to get us excited about it. And me and her little sister, Mariama, had just been mum about it, just kind of looking at each other because we had a secret coming. And so on the day of her birthday, she was really bummed out at first. And she went to the market and everything like that. And we managed to pull off a surprise party for her as she was
sweet.
shocked. Yeah. So I taught Mariama how to make an American style cake. We made it on a coal pot. We made a chocolate cake with icing and everything. And when Binta saw it, she just started crying. Yes. But then she's like, wait, no, I need to come back in, not crying, take a video. I need to post this to Facebook.
So Facebook is definitely,
Oh yeah,
the thing. Posting the selfie.
She wanted to show off her seeing her cake for the first time. So I don't know. That's just the joy and everything from that day. Probably my favorite memory.
Yeah, that's absolutely special. It really is. Daniel, your memory.
So any of them could tell you that my best friends there were definitely my students. One in particular, his name was Cabo, and I love that kid. He just became he was the reason why I don't just love my time being in Sierra Leone and being in that village in particular. But there's one thing called Dear Day. It's this worldwide celebration of it stands for Drop Everything and Read, and it's just trying to promote literacy and reading and just stuff like that worldwide. And so we did it over at my school, and I actually rewrote the play for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs so that it would be more culturally appropriate, and there were some traditions that I put into the story, and I wrote scripts on little note cards so that my students wouldn't have to memorize it, but they could read it together. at the play, and I had my student Cabo as the narrator. So whatever he said, students would move around to whatever he was saying about their character, and then they would move around. And it went so well. It went so smoothly. It was so much fun. My kids were Sierra Leone children are great actors, and they have so much energy, and they're so enthusiastic about everything. So it was perfect. No one was like afraid of like performing and getting the spotlight on them. And when the play was over, the audience, they just stood there, they didn't clap, and we were like, oh my god, they didn't like it. And they were like, more. This was great. Like, where's the rest of the play? We want another part. And we're like, oh, we only planned for an hour-long play. We didn't think you guys would sit for much longer. But it was just so great. I got so many like good responses, and the kids loved it who were in it. It was fun.
So you introduced them to theater, basically, theater and the arts.
Oh no, they've had that.
They had that down pat. Okay.
I was just trying to find a story that like they would be able to incorporate.
That's awesome. Getting that interaction and engagement. That's great. So Denzon, I know you have a bunch of memories as well. You want to share one with us?
Yeah, so I want to preface this by saying my colleagues know that I complain a lot. And I may have complained to the point where they thought I did not like Sierra Leone. But honestly, my fondest memory, I have two of them. One would be my kids in my town, who will always follow me. Pumwi meaning white man.
Oh, okay.
Even though we're African American, you black, you come from the West, you're white. And so they're Pumwi, buy me bread. And so I would relent, and because they did have a soft spot in my heart for them. And my second one would just be going to Freetown, which is the capital. And why Freetown? Because it's this professional world within the African setting. Mm-hmm. And I know that should not shock anyone, but oftentimes when Americans think of Africa, they think of nothing but the bush, but newsflash, Africa is developing, and they have large urban centers that are just like almost like anything in the United States or the Western world. So going to Freetown, just, being African American, always living in a nation where, it's a very multicultural, many races. Just seeing majority black people, running banks, politics, just everything under the sun. It impressed me. And really, I will always say that I don't want to go back to Sierra Leone. When I was there, I would always say I would never come back to Sierra Leone, especially when it was hot and I was aggravated. But I've been trying to get back to Salone, but now with Corona going on, of course, that makes things a little difficult. But I would say those are my fondest memories. Just being among these people who are building a nation. Something special.
Absolutely. Well, you all definitely made an impact while you were there, and it's great that not only did your students and the people that you came in contact with gain a lot from your presence, but I think you gained a lot from their presence as well, and just being with them in their natural cultural setting. So I want to shift, because we want to get into the values before we go into the next part of the conference segment. How did Sierra Leoneans change your outlook of the world? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
For me, I think that Sierra Leoneans taught me that life is way too short. I mean, you knew that going into that, but it's just like anything could happen that you don't know. You can't plan everything out for life. So you need to learn to just enjoy it for what it is. You need to learn to laugh at yourself. Sierra Leoneans taught me to laugh at myself all the time. Whether good or bad, and I would have a rough day and end up laughing at myself, just because it's honestly like laughter's like the best medicine. But yeah, they taught me that just have to enjoy life for what it is, and it could be, it doesn't matter if you have millions of dollars and like this huge platinum screen TV, or if you're playing with a bag full of rocks and just tossing it at your friends. Like, you can make fun and pleasure out of anything if you put your mind to it. You just need to learn to enjoy life and not put it into materialistic things.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay,
I was meditating on the question. That's such a profound question. I think if anything else, Sierra Leone gave me like a level of confidence that physically, mentally, spiritually, like just the transformation that happened in that short amount of time. I always reference that as like, that was like my turning point in my 20 something years of living. Um, a lot of it just with me identifying with who I am as a Black woman. And just anywhere I went, being people were like, oh, you're beautiful, queen, this and that. And just having those affirmations on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with Denzon. I love going to free time because that's where you're mixing with more young professionals who are either they came back from the diaspora and they're now living and working professionally and enjoying all of the beauty and nature of the beaches and everything that there is to offer, but just being their natural selves. And I carry that with me, you know, anywhere else that I go, to just have the confidence to know that I am equipped in any sort of capacity to achieve anything that I want to because of that.
I love that. I am equipped. I love that. I love that. Piper.
Okay, so I think I've narrowed it down to two things. Could go on for hours.
I know it.
But on one side, I think it made me realize my responsibility as a global citizen to lift up the voices of those from not just the countries that are most forgotten, but the areas in the countries that are the most forgotten. So my students in the rural town I lived in, Mishingbi, they would never have a chance generally to travel the world, to do anything like that. And that's not right. That's not how the world system should be. So that's what motivated me to go on to get my master's in public policy, to lift up those voices from rural communities in countries that are forgotten and should not be. And then on a personal level, Sierra Leoneans say, they have this in all the languages. Vaccine is what it is in Temne, or Bia in Creole, which means like, at first when you learn the meaning of it, you kind of think it means like, oh, just suffer through it, just bear it. But like, it goes deeper than that. It means like, just be patient and it will get better. Like, have hope and it will get better. And I think especially while we're going through such a weird stage in world history with coronavirus and everything else right now, being able to have hope for the future, be patient, lean on your community, have hope for the future. Vaccine.
Vaccine. Is that how you say it? Vaccine. Yeah. I like that. And you're right. I'm glad you tied it into what we're experiencing with coronavirus, because that's definitely something that people need to exercise, is more patience and more hope. All right, Denzon.
So real quick, in Creole, they will always say, I tell God tinky. And so they'll go, howdy body, which is how are you? And you always respond, I tell God tinky. You know, I say thanks to God, I give thanks to God. And so something my mother used to always say in English when I was younger. And so living in Sierra Leone and hearing that every single day, like Daniel said, it made me appreciate life so much more. Because when we first got there, there was a massive mudslide in Freetown, was it region? And it killed over 600 people in one mudslide. And so it's like, from that first event and then just living in Sierra Leone, I just learned to appreciate life. And Sierra Leoneans, they certainly appreciate life.
Awesome. So we've talked about your outlook on the world since having this experience, and obviously this outlook, because you know, you kind of alluded to the fact that this is what changed in you as a person, that epiphany or that realization of all of these things that you all talked about. And it's obvious too that you had a passion for working with the kids and the students and the people in the area. And so I know that you also understand the importance of your work and how it's probably helped them to understand the outside world as well. So as you think about all of this in a nutshell, and there's a couple of other things that I'm going to ask you to do before we wrap up this conversation. How important is it for our young people to become familiar with the outside world? You've talked about how it's impacted you, but you know, because of the fact that this program is centered around beyond Georgetown County and what you want the young people to understand about your experiences, how important is it for them to become familiar with, you know, some of the same types of experiences that you were a part of? One or all of you can answer.
I'll go on that one. So for me, particularly since we do live in South Carolina, where unfortunately education is not ranked the highest in the nation, I do think it's very crucial for South Carolina kids to recognize that the world is just bigger than the state, meaning that we should become way more culturally sensitive. So, for example, when it comes to the motherland, when it comes to Africa, people again tend to have this one notion of Africa, right? But I would just like to stress that nations like continents like Africa, they are up and developing, and so they always need manpower, brain power. And so when you're thinking about what you're wanting to do in life, one, you have to get rid of all these preconceived notions that are dangerous to any form of human development. Prejudice, racism, stereotypes are all dangerous to anyone's personal development. And then so if you're listening, any teenagers say as you go on about life, going through school, just remain cognizant that the world is big out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bigger world out there, and you always need your skill.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to chime in before we move on? We have a couple of minutes.
Well, I just think that it, as we go along with the goals of Peace Corps, that our goal is to help spread, break down stereotypes that people have of America and to build those bonds. I think that it's also important that we come back and we help people understand other countries and where we served. I think that we also need it's as much of an opportunity as we Americans might have the opportunity to travel to other countries, or we have the we have the media at our every disposal. I still don't think that people really have understandings of other countries in the way that they should, in the capacity that they should. I think it's easy to see something on TV and go with that and just assume that that's what it is everywhere. And because you'd be surprised how many people when I came back and I told them where I was and what I was doing, they were like, oh, I didn't think that there would be cities in Africa. I didn't think that there would be, and I had to keep saying I was in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I kept saying I wasn't in Africa, I was in Sierra Leone. I was in one country and then also in one village for the most part. People would just go with one sentence and assume I was traveling all over the continent. I'm like, no. But yeah, so it's very important that we have more people traveling the world and just spreading the word and breaking down stereotypes. I think people need to understand that there's more than just to the face value. There's more than just the pictures that we see or the videos we see online.
Absolutely. And I think that some people don't understand how vast Africa really is,
Exactly.
They don't know of the countries that are actually a part of Africa. And you're right, we've only been conditioned to understand what the media has shown us, and even in certain textbooks, as you all were talking about, preparing young people for, global learning. You have to ask the question as to how much of that is actually being taught in our classrooms, and whether or not there's a way to incorporate that kind of information into their learning. So I think that you all have had some very enriching experiences. And as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking to myself, wow, if I joined the Peace Corps back in the day, I'm sure that I would have a totally different outlook on life, and would probably be so embedded in the work and doing the same things that you were doing, because it definitely enriches you from the core. And so, it was great having this conversation with all of you. There's a special request. It looks like there might be a question. Let me see real quick. Here's a question. As we look at these emerging countries in Africa and may want to support their efforts, how can we be sure we can avoid the corruption that exists? And this person is hoping that this is not a stereotypical question.
No, that's an amazing question. I don't know if I can answer that. I'm going to pass the baton over to you guys.
Piper looks like she's ready.
I think you just have to research the organization that you're donating to. In my experience in Sierra Leone, I found that the smaller organizations, I wish Kate was here to answer this question right now, because the organization she works for is a really great example of a community-based organization that the people in the community are saying what they need, and that's what the money is going towards. I have kind of been turned off to international development after being in Sierra Leone, just because I think too many times it's Western countries or the global North telling Sierra Leoneans what they need. Like a really good example of that is there was a tiny village next to my town where the UN, UNICEF came in and built this beautiful latrine. It was tiled, it was gorgeous, and it was kept locked at all times. And they built it next to a school that was made of mud bricks and falling down. And the principal of the school, I was talking to him, and he's like, they said that they did this to improve sanitation practices, but if they had just asked me, I could have told them, like, help us rebuild our school, and then more kids will come to school and we can teach them how to wash their hands better. So I think you need to make sure the organizations you're donating to are the ones who are not Westerners telling people what they need, but coming from the community saying what they need. So I would, if you're wanting to donate money, find smaller organizations, and maybe Denzon can send out a link for Kate's organization or ones like that are community based, because the larger ones, it's just like they're trying to meet some global standard, which isn't necessarily going to help the people who need it the most in the way they need it the most.
That was very insightful and definitely appreciated, because we all wonder, you know, when we donate to these organizations, what actually happens with the funding, and is it really reaching the people who need it the most? So thank you, you know, for your insight there. So, you know, want to, of course, be a respecter of time, and I know we started a little late, so we have a couple of minutes that we can kind of toggle with. And one of the main things that I'd like for you all to do is, can you engage in a conversation with each other before this session ends, speaking the language that you all have in common?
Yeah, so out when they do.
I do fine. Are you?
I tell God thank you. I sleep.
I sleep fine. Oh, you fumbled them.
Then all well. What you?
We're to do fine.
I know I hear you down there. I want to let you talk the real Creole.
Talk real Creole.
Okay. Now,
you know,
what do you want to talk?
I don't forget.
You don't forget? I want to make. You know about WhatsApp? You know the call you fumbled? You paddy them?
Yeah, but no. Paddy, the paddy, they don't ask me for money, and I don't say, I know ever giving money. I don't forget to.
Osha.
That was my favorite one. Osha.
This is absolutely fascinating. Isn't it amazing, Denise? It is absolutely fascinating. These young people not only had to, you know, they traveled abroad and had to become acclimated or adjust to the climate and the environment, but they also had to pick up several languages, or, you know, in order to, this is absolutely fascinating.
It is.
Yeah, you guys are superstars. You really are. You really are. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Denise, do you have any comments or anything? I'm gonna look at the questions and see whether or not there's anything else for them.
Okay. I just wanted to say, you know, thank you guys so much, Piper, Anna, Daniel, Denzon. This has been truly just awesome. I'm always asking Denzon all the time. I said, say something for me. And you know, April, just a quick story. We were going to Walmart, him and I, and he was on his phone. And he was talking to somebody in whatever language. And I said, this is so cool. You know, and then I always ask him, I say, you have to tell me what you're saying now, because I want to make sure I know what's going on.
That is the beauty of speaking another language. I don't get to tell you what I'm saying, because I'm probably talking about you.
That's the reality. It really is.
But this has been amazing, and I just want to thank you guys for sharing your stories with us, and I hope that some young people are on and joining us, and I hope that what you have said have impacted them, their lives, and just give them a different view of what's going on around the world versus what's happening right there, especially right now. So this has been totally amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
One more time, just can y'all say my name? Anybody?
How you mean, like in Creole?
Yeah.
I think it would just be Denise, right?
Noel.
Hey, Auntie.
Oh yeah,
Auntie Denise.
Yeah,
Auntie. Now that's global.
Yeah. Yes.
That is global. All right. Well, again, thank you guys. That was absolutely fascinating and definitely empowering and enlightening when it comes down to the work of the members of the Peace Corps and your experiences overseas. The importance of our globalized world. Denzon, this was awesome. This part was definitely awesome. So coming up, we actually have French 101, the basics, Mr. Pierre Johnson. We introduced him a little bit earlier. I think Pierre is already a part of the stream, and I don't know if he's ready or not, but let me see if there's any messages from him. But we can move into that, and then coming up at 12 o'clock, we have the United States Foreign Service words from Claire Polk, U.S. diplomat in Jamaica. So, Pierre, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you, April?
All right. I've actually read your introduction a little bit earlier. I just kind of went through and read everybody's introduction, but if you'd like, you can touch upon a few things for us and just remind everyone who's viewing now who you are and why you're joining us today.
Okay. My name is Pierre Johnson. I'm from Conway, South Carolina. I got the name because my parents were in the military. I guess I'm their souvenir. You can say that. As I was telling Denzon, I took French not for any reason because of my birth. It was, when you have a name like Pierre, do you take French or Spanish? So I took French. I did well in the class, but it really took off for me after I got my first summer job in Myrtle Beach. And as many of you may know, there's a thing used to be called Can-Am Days. Large groups of Canadians would come down to the Myrtle Beach area to vacation. And during this first job that I had where we worked, it was a clothing store and you got a commission for how much you sold. Some of the kids that I worked with were kind of shy about dealing with these French-speaking Canadians. And me in my French class, the little bit that I learned, I would walk up to them and talk to them. And as that summer went on, I made a lot of money applying what I learned in school.
Right.
But also, as I met the people, they would give me a little more to say, a few more phrases. By the end of the summer, I could ask in French or say, hello, how are you? My name is Pierre. What size are you looking for? What color are you looking for? And invariably, as most shoppers will say, I'm just looking. I could even say, well, if you need me, just call me. My name's Pierre. Nice talking to you. Mm-hmm. And when I came back, I remember that next school year and reported to my French teacher, Miss Griffith. You might remember Miss Groves at the time.
Miss Groves, yes. Mm-hmm.
It just made the class say, wow, that is so cool. And in much the same reaction you have of hearing them speak Creole and other things, I was like, wow, this is cool. Mm-hmm. I sent a message to you, and it was more so for the kids who might be listening. If you can't afford to travel just yet, you can travel in your community. The area has become very diverse over the years, quiet as it's kept. And I know for me, running into Canadians during the summer was one thing. Also, my father worked at Georgetown. Mm-hmm. I met many professors from Nigeria, Cameroon one year. And just living life, you start to meet people. And I've always been a very curious student, not afraid of what was different. I kind of ran to it, well, what is this? Well, show me that. Well, what does that taste like? Well, why do you do that? Mm-hmm. So that's helped me. As I went on in French, after I graduated from South Carolina State, I was a French major. I also thought about the Peace Corps, but I'm a veteran. They kind of frown upon former military going to the Peace Corps. The locals might think you're a spy or something nefarious. So I was out of that. After graduating, I visited France and I learned about the assistant English teacher program where you could work in a local school as an assistant English teacher. I did that program and I stayed for 2 years. I can tell all the students who may be studying in school, what you're learning is valid. Mm-hmm. However, when you live in the country, it is very different. But you might not necessarily learn in class the vocabulary for opening your bank account or other things. And I learned that very quickly. It is amazing what being in a situation, how it will help your brain to retain information. So I would say my time in France is where I really learned how to communicate. It is also where I met my wife, and my life has changed incredibly since that time. So French for me has been, well, now it's a way that I feed myself and pay bills as a teacher. It's also expanded my worldview. I feel myself more of a world citizen now. My wife and kids, we travel extensively, and we can communicate with the locals. We've been to Quebec in Canada, which was amazing. We go back to France every other year because my in-laws live there. We were in Senegal, West Africa last year, which was life-changing.
Saw a
like
picture or
like
two.
many of them said.
Yes.
Yeah, being on the continent, it is
Yes.
very different from the movies and stories and everything you think you have learned through media. It is nothing like it. You have to be there and see it for yourself. And they have their, I remember Denzon saying some things about how he was called white, as dark brown as he was. They had the same thing in Senegal. Toubab. And it's not meant as an insult. It's just meant you're a foreigner.
Okay.
But, one last little thing about Senegal, many of the things that I saw felt very familiar. The way people move, the way their gestures, their hospitality, the way they dealt with food, offering food, the way they ask about you, who are you, who are your people, where are you from? And even some of the guys would try to crack jokes on me to be funny. And I'm pretty good at that game. I can crack jokes back, but it was all love. It was nothing bad. It was in French. It was in another country, but familiar at the same time. I'm sorry, I'll just chat.
No, I think that was an awesome intro to what you're going to be talking to the viewers about today. And you're right, it's so fascinating. And even your experience just working in retail and using a little bit of French that you knew to make a connection, and how that just kind of expanded into
in
something.
More ways than one.
That's right, exactly. You're right. And I saw the comment that you posted about your first connections with professors from Ori Georgetown Tech as an example. And you never know how that connection will change someone's mind or their interest in other things in the world. So share with us a little bit more about what you want to talk about today, and introduce us to in the world of France.
I wasn't so certain of how the format was going to be. I'm a teacher, high school age, so I thought maybe there would be a bunch of young faces that I could talk
the old
to.
faces can get it too.
It wasn't meant as a slight. I'm young too. But, I don't want to lecture, so to speak. I prepared a PowerPoint. It's kind of an overview, but I leave room open for questions.
Okay.
So I don't know. If I can see you and we can talk to each other, we can do it like that. You can be my student and Miss Chapman.
Well, I think that's fine.
I can see her face.
Yeah, and anybody else who wants to hang,
that's
to be a student today. That sounds great.
Okay.
All right. Do your thing, Pierre.
Well, I don't have the PowerPoint. I don't have access to it. I sent
what
it
would
to
you like for us to What would you like for us to do? I don't think he sent it to me.
Whoever can get it and control it, you just go to the next slide, that type of thing.
Yeah, Denzon, if you're listening, send yes.
I will pull it up because Pierre, you did email it to me yesterday. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, so we have kids from the Ori and Georgetown areas, right? Okay, so I'm your homeboy.
Yes, you are.
I'll speak to that in that manner.
Okay, that sounds good. We have some. Yeah, we actually have some viewers. I'm going to put one out on Front Street. Miss Marjorie Coakley McIver is watching.
Oh, yes. She was once a French teacher herself.
Yes, she said bonjour, mes amis. Yeah.
Bonjour. Yes. She let me know that some years ago.
Yes. And I don't know that people really know that about Miss McIver.
Oh, well, maybe I called her out. I need to be careful. I don't want to do that.
Et voilà, c'est parti. You see it?
Oui.
Bon.
Mais comment c'est? Oui. Comme ça. Merci. All right. Are you going to control it?
Yes, I control it.
Can you make it a little bit bigger? Oh, it's all like one thing. Oh, wow. It's like a Google slide.
He
Okay,
probably
I thought
went to the slide view or something
yeah,
like that.
it went to a
Mhm.
slide. I made it as a PowerPoint, Microsoft. I wasn't sure what format you would use. It's okay.
Yeah, it's
First
fine.
thing, it just says
You should-
Français, and I have a picture of the French flag. Please scroll down.
Yeah, you're fine, Denzon. Just keep scrolling.
Okay, try not to embarrass myself here.
You're good.
Story of a language. French is one of 5 widely spoken languages derived from Latin, and Latin was the official language of the former Roman Empire. Some of you may have heard that French is a romance language, and you're thinking lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy. No, romance meaning from the Roman Empire. Okay, please scroll. There are 5 languages derived from Latin. Oh, wow, I formatted wrong. French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. This may not be known by all of you. On this example of this slide, it shows some words, father, night, good, life, mother, and you can scroll with your eyes and see the similarities and differences between the languages. Because Spanish, the second language of the United States, I'll compare French and Spanish. Father, padre, père. Night, noche, nuit. Good, bueno, bon. Life, vida, vie. Mother, madre, mère. They are not the same. They are cousins. Okay, keep going. All right, did you know that over 10,000 English words come from French? Many others come from Latin, the language from which French originated. This is to say that many of you already know a ton of French words. You use them all the time. All the time. Please scroll. As I told you, my name was a souvenir of my parents. I'm having a feeling of deja vu. When are we going to rendezvous? Let me see your resume. I got a letter for the party, RSVP. Yes, this is French. I have another slide on that a little later to help you out. Haute couture for those into clothes and fashion. The home, dépôt, depot. You going on a trip? Bon voyage. This is all, that's so chic. This is all French. We already use it. Our pronunciation is a little different. This is stuff that I go in as the year goes by in class. All right, next slide. Pourquoi apprendre le français? Why learn French? We were already talking about the career opportunities. French is the language of business. American companies have over 2,000 subsidiaries in France, and French companies have over 600 subsidiaries in the United States, to include Renault, Michelin, HP, DuPont, Apple, Bic, Xerox. These are not all French companies. I just did a few. The next slides will point something out to our local students. Bic Consumer Products has a factory in Gaffney, South Carolina. You don't have to speak French to work at Bic. I'm just pointing it out. Michelin, I have a connection to this. They have their North American headquarters.
That's right.
In Spartanburg, South Carolina. When I was an undergrad at South Carolina State, a friend of mine's sister was an executive secretary at Michelin. She had to learn French. She was sent to France to work for Michelin and moved back and forth between the US and France. She gave me a large cache of her study materials to help me, and I deeply appreciate it. It helped me out a lot. Please scroll. Just an overview. Francophone contributions to art, literature, movies, fashion, cuisine, science, and technology. There's the engineering, the fast trains that they have over in France and throughout Europe. I put a poster of an artist, Toulouse-Lautrec, Louis Vuitton, which many love and adore. I have Peugeot, this is a car company, Air France, Perrier, mineral water. I put a book, The Little Prince, Le Petit Prince. There's a film that I show to my class. Different things. Please scroll. Of course, French is great for travel. It is the language of tourism. I have a picture of the Eiffel Tower, the iconic Eiffel Tower in Paris. The bottom, I have the Chateau Frontenac. This is in Quebec, Canada. I visited there a few summers ago. And on the top right, this is an aerial view of Ile de Gorée, Gorée Island, where many of us, where our ancestors may have passed through before coming to the United States. I can pause there, April, because I see that gave you a thought.
Yes, it did.
It was very hard for my daughters when we went because I explained the history of it. They did not like taking a picture there, and they wanted to walk away as soon as possible. I can tell you that it was a very deep experience for me, as it is for many people of African descent who visit. But I guess I took a different feeling about it. I didn't leave depressed. I felt more empowered. Despite the horrors, you know, whoever my ancestor was made it, and here I am to close the circle. That was kind of my mindset. But, you know, we all have our different personal experiences.
We do. And I think it's striking that it affected your young children in the way that it did after explaining the history.
Yes.
But you're right. You know, we have to put it in perspective and pull that strength from the struggles and the brutality that our ancestors experienced to understand why we have to do what we have to do now to combat a lot of things. And so, yeah, just looking at the picture and you explaining what it is, it made
it's very beautiful.
It gave me goosebumps
from the aerial view.
Makes me want to see it in person.
Oh, well, there's an idea. And also to learn French for fun. I don't know if you can pick this up just yet, but I like to talk. I like to hang out. I like to just mix it up with a whole lot of people. And French has just opened up a second set of doors for me to do that, not only in English, but in French. I tell my students, je suis citoyen du monde. I am a world citizen. You know, and then they press me. I say, okay, I'm from Conway, South Carolina, but you know, we start with the world citizen.
There you go.
All right, keep going. You will find francophones. This is French speakers on all continents around the world. You will see in blue, these are countries where French is either the official, that's the darker blue, or the second spoken language, or administrative language, the language of government. For my students, I usually pause on that photo. Please go back up. You see that Canada is officially bilingual. And we can see France, but by and large, the majority of French speakers on planet Earth are African. I don't know how this wasn't taught directly. I don't know how I didn't realize it, but when I think about it, never did I see Black faces in films, magazine articles, anything talking about France. There were always Europeans. And what I try to point out to my students, ethnicity and nationality are not always the same thing. My wife, who is a nice chocolate brown person, is a French citizen. That is her nationality. People would not necessarily look at her and say, oh, she's French, when they think ethnicity. Okay, so in learning French, it really opened my eyes up to a lot of things. Denzon also mentioned how he wanted to go to Comoros, which is in the Indian Ocean. It's an island nation. This is an African country. Madagascar, the film that all the kids like with the animals on these, Madagascar is a Francophone country. This, of course, is due to colonialism, the history of colonialism with France. But again, to my young students of Horry and Georgetown counties who are African American, most French speakers look like you. I remember when I went to Paris and saw it for myself, and it blew me away. I had no idea. Paris looks like New York City.
Wow.
Don't let these movies fool you into thinking otherwise.
I was going to say that. I think that, there are things that are glamorized in movies and magazines and, other forms of media that do not depict the authenticity of these countries, namely the fact that, there are people who, like you say, are ethnically connected to these countries and not just by, a residential connection. And so, yeah, we don't always see that. So I'm sure that, especially young people in the Black community,
Yes.
it would be mind blowing to understand what you are explaining to us.
I have to do it every year, but it's okay. Again, I live in South Florida, so you have a wealth of diversity anyway. There's a large Haitian population in South Florida. My wife is Haitian born. She's from Haiti.
I just recently found out that through one of the DNA tests, that my family, I think on my mother's side, has a Haitian connection.
And very rightly so. After the revolution, many packed up and came to the United States. Quite a few settled in Charleston.
Yeah.
There's a French Quarter in Charleston. It's not only from France. Haitians that came over too after the revolution, Black and white. But anyway, at this point, I started talking about France specifically, but I'm trying to expand outward to the Francophone world, where the language can take you many places, not just France, not just a European destination. I want kids to understand that too. Okay, moving up. I threw just a few notables. Alexandre Dumas, he was a writer, most notably of the Three Musketeers. I like this picture because I didn't know this about him either. That wasn't a perm he had. That's an afro.
Is it? It's right. Yeah.
That's a brother.
Exactly.
He was the world's most famous writer at the time. I will tell you a story. He was invited to come speak to the United States, sight unseen, a letter written to him. And when he sent his reply to accept, he sent a picture of himself. And when people in the United States in the 1840s, 1830s, saw this man, they had to rescind the invitation because he looked like the people they kept in bondage. And God forbid they got an idea they could be a writer too. Moving on. Tony Parker. Tony Parker, Belgian born like myself, but he was raised in France. I'm an old basketball head. He might be a little too old for some of the kids now. I think he's retired. But he's one of many French-speaking NBA players from France or throughout the African continent. Moving on. Aissa Maiga, actress from Senegal.
I love her.
There's a film on Netflix, The African Doctor, and it's based off a true story that I think many of the kids may enjoy. It's a French film, but it's not, it has a diverse cast. You can see yourself in the film.
That's awesome.
If that makes any sense.
Pierre, did you know that the son, he became a rapper? He's a rapper.
Oh, yes.
Today.
Yes. I threw some other pictures. Miali Rogelina, the former First Lady of Madagascar. Valérie Plante, Mayor of Montreal, Canada. Luc Besson, again, I gave one of his films. He's a French film director. One of my
favorite movies.
The Fifth Element.
Yes.
Again, April, I think we might be a little older than some of these kids. They might not know this film, but famous French director. Okay. I think I have a little bit more. Okay, simple phrases. This is for you. Here we go. Please repeat after me. Bonjour.
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 You're almost not saying the N. Make it a nasal sound. Try to make the first syllable come through your nose. Bonjour.
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 Exactly. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle. Je
Yes.
m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
I believe this is essential and we don't say this enough. S'il vous plaît.
S'il vous plaît.
S'il vous plaît.
For those that get invitations. I didn't get many when I was growing up to those nice birthday parties. But if you do, your RSVP.
Now everybody knows what the SVP stands for.
You've been saying it forever. Répondez s'il vous plaît. Are you coming or not? Respond, please. I've asked my students, what does it mean? And oh my goodness, the things that they offer as an answer, it is French. Répondez s'il vous plaît. And I think I had one more. Yes, merci.
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 We can't say this enough as well.
Yes.
Merci. This is a picture from Senegal. I was in the village of Joal. The first president of Senegal after independence was Léopold Sédar Senghor. This is a fishing village. You can't see the details of it, but all of the ground is covered with tiny little shells. The little clam, the little aquatic animals that they eat. It's part of the food. You can see examples of the famous baobab trees in the background. This is my wife, Eve Rose. Next to me is my daughter, Anjali, her sister, Sephora, and Buba Mente. He was a young man that was staying in the house next door to us when we were in Senegal, and we hired him to be our guide.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
It was an amazing experience. I think that's the end of the slide. If you had questions, we can take up the time.
April, do we have any young folks on?
Let's see. There's one person who wanted you to repeat the name of the city. I believe it's when you were showing us the slide with the Eiffel Tower. And
Paris. The other city, Quebec. QU is not a quoi in French, it's Quebec. And the island was Île de Gorée, Gorée Island.
Maybe that's it, Gorée Island.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's in Senegal, off the coast of Senegal, the mainland.
And let's see if we have any other questions. Oh, do your children speak French?
Very good question. My wife only speaks French to the children, period, since they were born. So people ask me, do they speak French or English better? I would say yes. They speak it with equal facility. When we go to France, they just shift totally into French. They always speak English to me because in their mind, in their universe, daddy speaks English. I will admit, if we do see something strange, we're walking out in public and I'm saying, be careful, or, look out for that person that looks a little strange, I will shift into French to tell them, come back closer.
Oh, wow.
Things like that. But I usually speak to them in English.
Awesome. And I think it's, one of the things that when you were talking about the lessons and whether or not, our students, our young people are being exposed to these lessons in their, natural education environments and, why they don't know a lot of things. I think it's fascinating that, yes, we've gone through all of this time through history and have not intentionally exposed our young people to some truths that could help them to understand more about the world and thus becoming more culturally sensitive and understanding how, the countries actually interact and engage. And, that's one thing that, as we look to the next few years and we're just at the start of 2020, well, we're dealing with a lot in 2020, but I think that this is a great time for us to really evaluate how learning can change at this point, especially since we're getting ready to change to a different method or format of learning. And if they can't be exposed to it in traditional travel, something like this, as someone said before, where they're at least being introduced virtually and hearing authentic anecdotes and stories from people who've been there and done that, would definitely open up their minds so that when we can reintroduce learning in in-person environments, maybe there's a way to introduce them to these countries that we only read about and see on TV. And I think that I wanted to share this information because that thought came from a comment that Ms. McIver made. She says, she's a former French teacher and she taught in schools across Horry County, but she was not able to travel to France or
Yes.
French speaking countries, and she had to provide teaching and learning in different ways. So, she found it to be interesting, and she brought up the point of, now that, having virtual learning, we can certainly do more. So hopefully, this is going to be the spark that helps to kind of, ignite some other methods of learning across Horry and Georgetown counties, especially because that's really what we should do at this point, to understand each other more.
Yeah, if I can help, I've been that student. I've asked those questions. I lived that, wanting to know, and the surprise. If anyone was surprised by some of the images that I showed, I understand, and I definitely try to facilitate that to get students to push further, to ask those questions and be bold. The world is waiting on you.
Absolutely, that's right.
And Pierre, I'm glad you mentioned, the Francophone world, because as you said, the majority of French speakers are African. Correct?
Yes.
And so it's like when you're in Paris, you go to places like Chateau d'Eau, Chateau Rouge.
Chateau, it's nothing but, bruh.
You step out, it's like
That's the only place you can get a haircut.
Yeah, right. So it's like living in Paris, or just visiting Paris is something special because it is certainly a multicultural world. But
like New York.
Like New York, but like a lot of Americans don't know, the French don't collect statistics on race. So the French actually don't know how many, the white Frenchmen or how many black Frenchmen there are in the country.
That may change. There's been some debate on the merits of that, as far as representation. Wow. Many African Americans went to Europe to get away from rampant discrimination in the United States. But I can tell you, it just takes on a different form. It's not the same, but I found myself in situations where that felt familiar and not in the nicest of ways. But also, I think I'm a lighter skinned black man, and I look like a lot of people over there from Morocco, Algeria. So I've seen it. I've had situations happen to me based off how people are reading me, negative and positive. The assumption that I'm, North African, when I see other people on the street, I'm always being greeted in Arabic.
But actually, do you speak Arabic?
My Arabic is limited. Let me say this. I can speak English and French, meaning I can exchange and receive information. I can express my sense of humor in French and English. I say that I can speak those languages. Now, am I able to say phrases and little things in other languages? Of course, but I don't consider that speaking the language. A monkey can memorize a few words.
Pierre, before I hand it back over to Ms. Garner, I want to ask you a question, because a lot of people can see I have the tricolor behind me, the French flag, right? So when I was living in France, because I always told people, France is like my escape. It's this country that I can go to, I can immerse myself in the language in order to escape my reality as an African American. But, because like you mentioned, France has a brutal history of colonization. And so it's like, how do you personally pair your love for France, the Francophone world, with that history that a lot of people don't, that's what turns them off about France? It's almost like the African American experience in America.
That's almost a loaded question, but I will answer you honestly. I'm sorry, I'm fidgeting with my computer because it says that the battery wants to die and it's not recharging, but I will be succinct. My view and what you said has slightly changed since traveling to Senegal. I stayed there for a month. We stayed there for a month. So I had time to get to know the local people, talk to folks. They would see me walking by every day and we strike up conversations. Living in a former French colony made me a little sensitive when I returned back to France. France for me was that escape when I initially went, but now I can see the effects of colonialism. I can see the after effects of what happened in Senegal. I'm a little older, a little more sensitive to it. Things are different. And I told you, people receive me in different ways, so it gives me a different perspective on some things. So I don't know if I have, people say, oh, well, you're a French teacher. Don't you love to drink French wine? No, I don't drink. Oh, well, you know, don't you love French food? Man, I'm a vegetarian. I don't mess with a whole lot of that stuff.
Right.
It's not the language for me has become more of a tool. I've got another set of keys to open other doors.
Yeah.
You know, access. I'm not in love with any one culture as much as I like to hang out with everybody. I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying.
No, I get it perfectly.
I'm kind of wide open with everybody. I don't put anything on a pedestal. I am, if anything, I'm 100% African American.
But you're creating global sensories within yourself by being open
and
to
for
other
my
things.
kids, because whenever we travel, we've always taken my kids since they were 2, and I want them to be wide open global citizens, not stuck in their thinking. And I feel that I may have been at one point in my life.
Awesome. Pierre, do us a favor before your computer dies. Will you please type in the name of the city or the island?
All those, yeah.
Yeah, if you'll type that in for the attendees to see as well.
Yeah.
And of course, I can't express enough how proud I am to sit here with you and talk to you today, because you are indeed my homeboy. We're both from Conway.
There you go.
And grew up together. And you know, it's so wonderful to know that you've had these experiences, and I've lived vicariously through you when I see you on Facebook, and I'm going to visit Senegal one day. But thank you.
Hit up my Instagram page. I have better pictures.
I will do that. I will do that. And what I've been doing as well, Denise, do you have a couple of words for Pierre before we move on to our next guest?
I'm going to try this, and then don't laugh at me. Mercy. Did I say that?
Yes, you did.
Well, mercy. And if I can say phenomenal, if you can tell me how to say that.
Phenomenal?
Huh?
Phenomenal? That's what you're, phenomenon. Phenomenal. It's very similar.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. It's more of an accent. Phenomenal.
Merci, phenomenal.
Oh, de rien. Je vous en prie.
She's gonna be saying that all day.
It's okay. It starts with one word, and then you learn the second one.
I tried to teach her some French, but Ms. Chapman doesn't want to listen to me.
She'll want it now, I guarantee you.
I want it now. He's so rough. You know, some teachers, when they know you,
yeah,
you just think that I'm supposed to get it just like that.
Well, then you need to reconnect with Pierre. And
it's okay. Exactly. Baby steps. It's okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pierre. Have a good one.
See you.
Appreciate seeing you. All right, so we are actually on time and approaching the noon hour, where we will be introducing Claire Polk, and she is the U.S. diplomat in Jamaica. She'll talk about the United States Foreign Service and has a presentation for us as well. So I'm going to give Claire a few moments just to come on and get ready for her presentation. Just want to remind everyone that this session is being hosted by the Francis P. Bunnell Foundation's Facebook. So you can definitely go to their Facebook page, excuse me, and view the rest of the day one of this conference. Also, we've shared it across various Facebook pages as well, and we appreciate it if you would share. And I'm speaking about that on behalf of Denise Chapman and Denzel Winley with Optimism Preventive Services. Please share this information. It's been incredibly enriching and inspiring, and and this is just the first day of the conference. This is the first day. So yes, so Claire, is it? Claire, how are you doing? Oh, you're on mute. We tend to do that.
There we go.
Yes, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
We are all well and just having a good time here.
The place where I was trying to charge it isn't charging it anymore.
This is awesome. Let's see, let's see, is Pierre on? Yeah, Pierre's on mute. Want to put Jamie on mute. Anyone who is not speaking aside from me, please go on mute. Yes, awesome. All right, Ms. Claire. So I'm going to actually reintroduce people to you because in the beginning I read the bios for everyone, and we've just been kind of rolling along. We really have not taken a break since this morning, but I do want to reintroduce everyone and give them a little bit of information about you. So Claire joined the State Department in 2018 as a public diplomacy officer. She's assigned to Jamaica as a consular officer and is currently completing a domestic detail in the Operations Center's Office of Crisis Management and Strategy. Prior to joining the Diplomatic Corps, she worked as a journalist covering economic development and education policy for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, then at Reuters in Washington, D.C. as a reporting fellow. She also taught journalism in a magnet program sponsored by the Poynter Institute in St. Petersburg, Florida. She received her BS in newspaper journalism with concentrations in African American history and global security from Florida A&M University, as well as her MA in international communication from American University School of International Service in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate having you here.
Oh, thank you all so much for having me. So I'm super excited. I actually met Denzon on a fellowship with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. We traveled to Japan together, so known each other for years, and this is such a great initiative. So I'm super excited to be here, and I really want this to be more of a conversation. I feel like there are so many misconceptions about what diplomacy is, about what the State Department is. I tell people I work for the State Department, and the first response is, "Oh, which state?" So I love taking advantage of opportunities like this to really kind of demystify what diplomacy is, like what my work entails, and kind of pathways to this career, because it's not nearly as unattainable as a lot of people think.
Ms. Avery, you're muted.
I think that's awesome, and we're definitely in line to be enlightened by this. I think it's fascinating when they said U.S. diplomat. I'm like, wow, that sounds real high powered and top secret and all that other good stuff. So yeah, tell us about your work.
So basically, I am a Foreign Service officer. What that means is that my everyday work entails advancing U.S. foreign policy interests overseas. The way that I like to describe it is that just like how there's no such thing as a doctor, like every doctor has their own specialty. You have a podiatrist, you have an optometrist. The same goes for diplomacy. Like no two diplomats are the same. And you have diplomats who are economists, you have diplomats who are political scientists, who are HR professionals, attorneys, nurses, doctors, all of these different career paths and fields. So my specific area is public diplomacy. So a lot of it is doing things like this, talking to people, outreach, having conversations with the public about the United States, about diplomacy, about our history and our cultures, and engaging a lot with foreign media and students overseas, encouraging cultural exchanges. All of those things kind of fall under the wheelhouse of public diplomacy. So it's really fun work. Definitely challenging, very rigorous, and it's been a long, convoluted route to get here, but I've loved it every moment of it.
And I'm going to ask you another question. Why did you choose to join the Foreign Service?
Oh, wow. So I actually, I'm a very spiritual person, and I feel like there's no such thing as coincidences. And every moment of my life, like every step that I've taken, I have seen the ways in which it's been guided and been directed. And I feel like entering the Foreign Service was no exception to that. So it all started in a dorm at Florida A&M University in 2010. One of my roommates, a fantastic young woman named Sunshine, and she's FAMU. She speaks Arabic and Spanish fluently, and her boyfriend at the time, now husband, is a diplomat, a foreign service officer. So we all met when we were in school, and we would all hang out and became friends. And I always stayed in touch with them after graduating, and I was working in journalism. And I started to get kind of that itch, that feeling like I need to do something different, and I want to try something new. And I was looking at grad school. I was looking at maybe going overseas and teaching abroad. And I just had a conversation with Sunshine and her husband one day, and we were just catching up. I didn't tell them anything about the fact that I was looking to maybe make a transition. And out of nowhere, Sunshine's husband, his name is Calvin, and he's one of my mentors to this day. He was like, Claire, I always saw you like doing this work. I always saw you like as a diplomat. And I don't know why. It's just something that I've always kind of associated with your personality and like the things that I know about you. And I was like,
Wow.
So I took the dive. I took the test and was like, you know what, we're just going to try and see what happens. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So,
and that's amazing. He saw something in you you didn't see in yourself, and
myself.
here we are. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, planted a seed. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So I don't know if you want to get into your presentation now, because of course I don't know what all you want to share with us, but I do have some other questions if you want to continue the conversation, or you can, go into your presentation if you'd like.
Absolutely. So I do not have a formal presentation. So
okay.
I'm more than happy to do, like I said, I want this to be a conversation. So I'm open to like some questions that anyone has.
All right.
Really...
So, okay. Let me remind our viewers, if you will, please drop in your questions. There's a Q&A feature that you can use, or either the chat, and I'll definitely moderate those questions to our guests. But, in the meantime, we'll just continue to answer a couple of questions that we've prepared for you as well. So which route do most people take to join the Foreign Service?
So that's the thing, is that I do not feel like there is necessarily like one specific route into the Foreign Service. There's so many different backgrounds that people come from. I have colleagues who studied forestry and environmental sustainability, economic development, people with MBAs, attorneys, medical doctors, all these different things, who are now working as diplomats. So I don't think there is necessarily like
one track to it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think it's definitely important to have an interest in travel, in living overseas. That's kind of a shared characteristic that a lot of us have, a sense of adventure and openness to change, definitely adaptability and creativity, I think are like characteristics I've seen in a lot of Foreign Service officers. But there is not necessarily, I think, one direct path. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. And so what are some of the bigger challenges that you face working in this particular sector?
So I think definitely one of the biggest challenges that I talk about a lot is just being a Black woman in any professional space. I'm so sorry, being a Black woman in any professional space, I feel like you're coming in with all these expectations and ideas about who you are that are kind of projected onto you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh goodness, so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
Perfect example, I think, in the State Department. I'm so sorry. Give me one minute.
It's okay. Mm-hmm. So we'll give her just a moment to get herself together. But Denise, I know that we have a few more things that we'll be going into, in terms of our discussion with Ms. Polk. Well, she prefers to be called Claire.
Right.
But do you want to give everyone just a glimpse into what they're going to experience tomorrow? Because this particular segment actually wraps up at 1 o'clock today. And then, of course, the day 2 is tomorrow. And is there anything that you want people to know about what they may experience?
I don't know if Denzel, are we going to, I don't know if we're going to have time, but the music component, will we be able to get any of that today, Denzel?
Yes, we do have the files, so if you all are wanting to display the musical component, that's no problem.
Okay. And you have the agenda for tomorrow. I know that we are having Dr.
Paula Trackman, yes, we will be.
From
Dr. Paula Trackman will be our keynote speaker tomorrow at 12 o'clock, where she will come in and she will respond to questions concerning the nature of COVID-19. What's a virus? Essentially, what's a virus and how do viruses mutate into epidemics and then pandemics.
So tomorrow is going to be just as exciting as today. And I am just having a good time. And I hope you are, April. I'm enjoying this.
I am. I really do appreciate you all asking me to be a part of this. And, you know, just like I said, I've learned so much and been reminded of a lot. And that really, you know, it's enriched me on a Friday. And it makes me want to, you know, learn more, to continue to find out more about, even if it isn't right now an opportune time for us to travel abroad, you know, just thinking about some of the ways that you can open up your horizons and experience some things. And, you know, the idea of learning the second language or learning another language, you know, I've been dibbling and dabbling in that. I'm not going to name any apps because I don't want to give them any free advertising, but I can tell you that now it makes me want to, you know, kind of amp up my game as far as that's concerned, to learn a little bit more and, you know, just expose myself to more things. And I think that that's what you really wanted this conference to be about, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. And I know that we do have some of the teams they're on, and I just hope that they're being inspired. I just wish if I can go back, just looking at this beautiful face in front of me, if I can go back, I would be asking her, what do I need to do to become a diplomat? You know, this is wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for your patience.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
So, as I was saying, I think being a Black woman working in any space, there are all of these preconceived notions that are really kind of projected onto you. And I think the State Department is no exception to that. So I think coming into this work with a really strong sense of self has made a big difference for me. Historically, the State Department has been white male Yale. So like you have white men coming out of Ivies and straight into the State Department. And that's just kind of been this boys club culture for a very long time. So I think the institution is trying to shift away from that. But there are some things that are like deeply ingrained in people's psyches and their behaviors. And if you're not careful about like making sure that you don't internalize those things, then it's very easy to buy into that and to buy into that idea that it's respectability politics, because that's essentially what it is that there are these boxes that I need to check to prove that I deserve to be here. And there are things that I need to do to make others see what is special about me and what makes me a valuable team player. And none of that is the case. Like, I think coming into the work because you're passionate and because you're capable, like that's really the baseline. That is it. So there's nothing else to prove. And I think remembering that and holding on to that, especially when you're overseas, when you're not necessarily in your comfort zone anymore, and you don't have your parents or your family or your loved ones or your friends around you to kind of remind you of who you are and keep you grounded. Like, it's important to hold on to those ideas and not let it change you.
Absolutely. So as you think about your work in the Foreign Service and what appears to be some of Americans' perceptions of the world, what do you think Americans need to pay more attention to in the world?
I definitely think there is a huge information gap between a a lot of Americans and what is happening on the continent of Africa. I think there are a number of reasons for that. You can talk about media coverage and how much that is lacking, a lot of mainstream media coverage on the continent. We can talk about systemic racism and how the images that we typically do see coming out of the continent of Africa are they're very limited. They tend to be a lot of very trauma-based, focused on violence and famine, and not necessarily some more contextualized, in-depth coverage. But all that to say that I think that a lot of Americans, especially Black Americans, have like some pretty deep-seated misconceptions about what's going on in the continent of Africa. So I think that's definitely a huge information gap that that we can be intentional about starting to kind of break down and unlearn. You have outlets like All Africa. I'm a huge Al Jazeera fan. I think in terms of mainstream media outlets, they do some of the best work in terms of extensive coverage and a lot of think pieces and like long form investigative pieces about coverage on the continent. And also I think being intentional about traveling there. I did not hop on a plane ever in life. My first time getting on a plane was my freshman year in college when I did an internship in South Africa. And I was intentional about, I knew that I wanted my first trip overseas to be somewhere on the continent. I was like, I don't know where, but I know that I want my first trip to be to the motherland. And that was such a transformative experience for me. So even as you see like this whole like cohort of millennials and Gen Zers who are like kind of taking Travel Black and really like being intentional about traveling overseas, I think taking that intentionality to the continent is something that makes a huge difference.
And one of the things that you said that, you know, kind of struck a chord with me, because I think it resonates with what is happening in the United States today, is the fact that in order for us to move forward and really show more empathy towards one another and to understand, you know, the plight of different individuals, and particularly, you know, Blacks or African Americans in our country, people have to, as you say, break down and unlearn things. And if, you know, your experiences abroad have taught you that, then you definitely have become more powerful just in your thinking, because yeah, there are different ways of thinking and different ways that, you know, we all meld into the fabric of our country. And for you to be someone who is, you know, is trying to take American perceptions into other areas and either perpetuate them or, you know, teach people how not to think about them, I'm sure is a very challenging job. It's something that, you know, it probably can take a lot out of you in the run of a day. What would you say is the toughest part of your job?
I think probably one of the most difficult parts of my job is a sort of lack of control over a lot of things. I've always been really adventurous and really just kind of open and excited to like whatever opportunities are presented to me, which is something I think is like necessary if you're going to do this type of work. But there's also like, when you join the State Department, one of the things that you learn is like needs of the service always come first, especially as an entry-level officer. So our assignments are what they call directed. So you can tell your career development officer, which is essentially the person who decides where you go, you can tell them, hey, these are some of the things that I prioritize. These are the things that I would like to experience in my first assignment. But at the end of the day, the decision is not yours. It falls to someone else. And so like realizing that so much of your life, even like where you could live for the next 2 years, is something that that you don't necessarily have control over. It can be challenging. It can be really challenging.
And I guess you have to stay ready for that type of change all the time, because it's like, it sounds like you're constantly adjusting, just adjusting and reacclimating yourself. And, you know, I'm sure that can be an adventure, but at the same time, probably by the time you settle down one place, it's time for you to move again. And then, you know, you have to kind of restart in terms of how you, you know, I guess create that space for yourself. So I can imagine what you're saying to be very challenging, very difficult. So how does one become an ambassador? What do you know, if you wanted to set it as a career path and not just happen into it like you did, how does one become an ambassador?
So to be clear, I am not an ambassador.
Okay.
I'm a foreign service officer. So in terms of ranking, foreign service officer, ambassadors are technically diplomats, but they are the highest ranking person representing the president in whatever country they're in.
Okay.
So I'm not there. You know what? We're going to speak it into existence maybe someday. But
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Claire. I was going to ask you, do you have plans to pursue a long-term career in the Foreign Service and hopefully become an ambassador one day? Or is it too early to determine?
Well, I'm only in my first tour, so I like to joke, I'm still a baby diplomat, but I love the work, and it's super rewarding. And I think like many of my generation, I try not to like put myself in a box. So I think as long as I'm enjoying the work, I think as long as I'm doing things that I think are rigorous and challenging and meaningful, then I would love to stay kind of in this route and in this direction.
So break down your day for us, Claire. What's the day in the life of a diplomat? What is it like?
What does the average day look like? That's the thing, is that I think every day is different. And it's one of the things that I love about this work, is that there is not, you can have a plan coming in and kind of a to-do list of these are the things that I am going to accomplish and work on. And by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, all of that is out the window. And you've pivoted and you're focusing on something else, which is I think another, like, it's just another characteristic that is really important if you want to do this line of work, which is flexibility and creativity, and like not being too committed to a plan or even a place for that matter. So yeah, I think every day is different, which I really enjoy.
Okay. So I don't know that you were on board yet whenever I was explaining that my primary work is as a career services director for one of our local community colleges.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that we talk to students all about is having the right combination of hard skills and soft skills in order to be successful in whatever line of work they choose. So if you were to break that down for aspiring Foreign Service officers, what are some technical things that they need to know about the position, but also how important are the soft skills or those interpersonal skills in your line of work?
I would say the soft skills are crucial. And the thing about a lot of hard skills are that they're things that you can learn, sometimes even on the job, but a lot of soft skills, so things like interpersonal communication, emotional intelligence, public speaking, things like that are things that take a lot more time to develop and hone. I know plenty of people who I work with who learned like coding and statistics and data management on the job. There's an entire Foreign Service Institute that's devoted to training foreign service officers to do their jobs. So things like foreign language instruction. You're getting ready to go to Egypt, you don't know how to speak Arabic, you'll go to FSI and they will teach you how to speak Arabic. But like coming in and knowing how to interact with people who come from very different backgrounds than you, and how to deal with like very different communication styles, and how to present information in a way that people will retain and understand.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are things that are a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging. So I think like really just investing in, I can't emphasize this enough. And I also think I'm biased because I am a public diplomacy officer. So my wheelhouse is communications, but I think really investing in like strong communication skills, and like developing that emotional intelligence and being able to develop strong interpersonal relationships with colleagues, and figuring out how to navigate office politics. Like those are things that are really, really useful.
And you're absolutely right. And as we were talking about soft skills, I think whenever young people are choosing career paths, you have to really, excuse me, take inventory of those things that are kind of ingrained in you, or that are just a part of your personality when you're choosing career paths. So, you know, based upon what you've explained in terms of those interpersonal skills, if you don't have a knack for public speaking, and you, even with training, you find it hard, then something like this may be a little bit more difficult. If you tend to be more of a loner or introvert, I'm not saying that that would dismiss you from being, you know, a great candidate for a position like this. But if your job is to create connections and establish relationships with people, you know, and to develop connections, then, you know, those are the strengths that you have to really pinpoint as you choose a career path like this. And you know, because I'm sure that you're always doing this, you're the face of diplomacy as far as what you do. And so one question that comes up, we'll kind of shift gears a little bit. Would you like to see more young ladies of color in the role of diplomat? Or you know, do you see that in your role?
Definitely. So I was really fortunate that I joined the State Department through a fellowship. So in my fellowship cohort, I met a lot of like young women of color who are now foreign service officers. So because of that, I have like a strong contingency of like young Black and brown women around me who are also doing the work. I also attended a historically Black college for undergrad, and after I joined the State Department, I met quite a few alumni from my university who are now also in the State Department. So because my university is so close knit, and like alumni are super intentional about reaching back and mentoring students, other alumni who are coming up behind them. I've had like just a steady arsenal of mentors, both from my university and from my cohort, who have come in with me. But all that to say, that is never enough. Mm-hmm. And the State Department is still has a very long way to go in terms of diversity and bringing in and attracting more and attracting a wider range of candidates.
Mm-hmm. So you want to give a shout out to your HBCU? I might have.
That's Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida.
Say that again. I think I laughed at the time.
That's Florida A&M University.
Florida A&M. That's right. That's already in your bio. Exactly. So, and I think that that's encouraging as well, because anyone who is listening and who aspires to, you know, pursue their college journey or go on their college journey to an HBCU, please understand that, you know, there are no limitations. And If you can do it, certainly they can do it as well. And it's just a matter of understanding what the career options are, and as far as the occupational ties that go along with working as a diplomat or even working for the State Department. And you were talking about some of the things that the State Department needs to work on, including that, you know, it's a hot topic item now, diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I'm sure that there's lots of work to be done everywhere in that arena. Are there any, I guess, common misconceptions that Americans have about the State Department, or, you know, is there any clarity you want to add to what the State Department's role is in terms of, you know, the work in the world?
Absolutely. So I think maybe some of the biggest misconceptions that I receive are just like, it's really just an information gap. So I think I say diplomacy and I say foreign service officer, and it's like people draw blanks. So there's not really any sort of association. It's really just kind of a mystery in terms of like the everyday work, that we do. And I think we at State can always do a better job at promoting ourselves. Obviously, a lot of the work that we do is outward facing, it's overseas, but we also have a domestic audience. You know, when we take that oath of office, our first commitment is to be of service to the Constitution and the American people. So it's important that like the American people, the American public, kind of know and understand what it is that we're doing on an everyday basis. So a lot of Americans don't necessarily like have an interaction with the State Department unless they're applying for a passport, or they travel overseas and heaven forbid something terrible happens and like they get arrested or they have a medical emergency or something like that, and then they have an interaction with the embassy. But otherwise, it's kind of rare that an everyday average person would come in contact with a diplomat or anyone from the State Department. So it's just I think we on our end can always do a better job of just having conversations like these, where people can ask questions and begin to understand kind of what our everyday work entails.
Awesome. One of our attendees wants to know how long you've been a diplomat.
I have been working with the State Department for 2 years. I just hit my 2-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago.
All right. Any regrets?
Oh no. Like I said, the direction that I've taken, every step of the way, it's been super intentional, and I feel like it's been guided. And I think this next step with the State Department is no exception.
Well, Claire, this has been a very intriguing conversation with you. I can formally say that I know a U.S. diplomat. And it's exciting.
We can say that we met one.
We have met one. Exactly.
Yes.
And this is so awesome. It really is. And I don't know if Denzon and Denise have any questions for you, but I'm going to continue to look at the thread to see if there are any questions or comments that are coming in from our participants. But Denise, Denzon, do you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
I have just a quick question, and I think either Claire or Denzon can answer this. When I first started learning about how kids, how young people locally could be involved in the foreign, government, a service, all of this stuff, fellowships, I learned through Denzon, through writing all of these letters of recommendation for him. But we know that as colleges, they come, they recruit. April, as a career person, you all have all these career days, and we bring all of these different individuals in, colleges, representatives, whatever. But I've never seen anyone brought in someone from the State Department. So how would our kids know? How would young people know? Unless you're just smart like you and Denzon, and you do your research and you have a passion. How do they know? They may not know. And maybe somebody out there right now that's interested, but they don't know.
They don't know how to get started.
What would you all say?
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I grew up in a very small rural farming town in North Florida, and I had no idea what diplomacy was. I didn't know what a diplomat was. I always knew that when I grew up, I wanted to travel. I knew that I loved to write, and that was just kind of like my guiding force. But there were never any conversations about doing working in international affairs or foreign policy. That was just never really presented as a career option. I didn't even know like what that could potentially look like. I thought, oh, maybe a foreign correspondent, maybe, but I couldn't really wrap my head around anything outside of that. So one of the things that I try to do, and it's just like a small drop in the bucket, but I try to go back to my hometown whenever I can and have these same conversations at my alma mater and talk to young students as they're considering which colleges they want to go to and what they want to study. Like, it's the prime time to think about like what potential career paths I could follow. So I try to be intentional about doing that. The State Department actually has a program, a formal program called Hometown Diplomats, where they encourage foreign service officers to go back to their hometowns and have these same conversations. I think some of the challenges are that you have foreign service officers who are coming from like New York or DC, where it's a lot more common to perhaps run into someone who is working in this career field. So that exposure is much greater. So I think it's really important, really important for people like me who are coming from areas that are really underrepresented, that are very underserved, to be intentional about reaching back and speaking into the lives of students there and helping them understand kind of what opportunities are out there for them.
And so for me, I tend to tell people all the time that everything I learned was through a book, because I've always been a bookworm. So when I would read, these biographies, the autobiographies, and they would mention a diplomat, like Claire said in the beginning, white male, Yale. Mm-hmm. I always thought they were these class of people, they were bred to occupy a job such as a diplomat. But as I got older, high school, college, I learned what the Peace Corps was. I was introduced to the Peace Corps. I was introduced to just what the State Department does. So I think conferences like these are important because, we bring in people who occupy these posts that people just don't know about, and particularly when we think about representation in the Foreign Service, I think, Claire, you will say it's still majority white male in a sense. And so it's like, I believe if we come back home and we put on conferences or we just talk to people, like I talk to my nieces and nephews all the time about things that they've never heard about. I think that would be the easiest way to spread the word, because unfortunately in states such as South Carolina, where they don't put a premium on foreign language learning, they don't encourage you to learn about, what just is globalization. It's people like, everyone's here, everyone in attendance, who will go forward and spread the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can certainly say that this has been, a great part of this segment, and it is so great to see you in the position that you're in. I'm sure you have inspired a lot of young women of color to, add this to the list of things that they could possibly aspire to do, and, wish you all the luck in the world, Godspeed in what you're doing, and just continue to shine. And I love the fact that you talk about going back to your community. I think that's what it's all about, because, our young people won't believe it until they see it. And so the bottom line is you've shown them that it can be done, and you've talked about it in a very positive way. And I think that that's one thing that we need to do as we try to instill you know, these ideas of being more, you know, outside of your communities, bringing it back to the community, is that yes, you can be whatever it is that you would like to be. You know, just search through yourself to find out what your strengths are. Maybe even talk to people who see it in you, just like you know, it happened for you. You know, if you're connecting with people like Denise Chapman and Denzel Winley, and they're working with these young people every day, day in and day out, they may see some things that are just too close to that young person for them to even understand. And so, you know, I hope that you continue to use your work to inspire others, and good luck to you in your future endeavors. And I'm going to turn it over to Denise to actually give us, you know, whatever final comments she has about this portion of the segment. And then we're going to, you know, take a little break, not necessarily a break, but we're going to go into something that'll kind of close out this part of day one. So Denise, do you have any final words to share with Claire?
I want to thank Claire so much. This has been such a great opportunity. And I have learned, April, I know you probably have too. I have learned so much. And just listening to you, every time we get through with one project, you know, your mind starts to wonder for the next one. And so just listening to you, you've been feeding my spirit. And so I'll be getting with Denzon and Jerica just from listening. There's some other things that we want to do. So you may be hearing from us. Well, I can say this, you will be hearing from us again. Prayerfully, this pandemic will be over soon and we can get to see you in person. Wouldn't you like that, April?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yes.
So that's where my mind is wandering right now, is going right now, because you have been just so inspiring. And I want to wish you the best and just continue to let that light shine so that others can see the good in you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm also happy to share my contact information. So if any of the attendees want to follow up with me or had additional questions that they think of later, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Hey, Claire, one final thing, Claire. A few of my friends have been texting me complimenting your hair.
I love it. I was going to say something as well.
Yeah.
Yes, here goes.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much, Claire.
And I just want to say, I have to piggyback on that now, because I think that especially our young Black women, they have to understand that, as you can see, Claire is U.S. diplomat. Denise is CEO and founder of a nonprofit organization. I work in higher ed. We all are donning our natural hair. Mm-hmm. It's not about the hair. So don't worry about the hair, but just bring your talents to the table so that you can make an impact in the world. The hair just follows.
Woo, say that.
Okay.
The first thing that I said is, like, these respectability politics.
Yes.
If you internalize them coming into the office, they will have you twisting yourself into a pretzel, trying to fit someone else's image of who you are.
That's right.
And in the process, like, maybe damaging your hair.
That's
like,
right.
Just do what it is that you love to do, that you think looks good. And if they don't like it, then that's their problem.
Right.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much, Claire. And again, good luck to you. And we do appreciate having you here today. So Denzel, I have Denzon. I keep calling you Denzel, I guess because of the Den. Not a bad thing, not a bad thing. But, you know, we are about 15 minutes out from the end of day one. Can you believe that, Denise?
I can't.
These hours, yeah, I'm telling you, they zoomed on by, but we had a great time the entire time.
We didn't even take a break.
No, we didn't take a break. And you know what? I think that's great. We just kind of moved on through. And so everybody, you know, when you get ready to take your lunch break now, you have plenty to talk about and more to digest, you know, as far as the information and, you know, everything that you've learned today. Pierre is already asking if we're going to do this again next year. I'm like, hey, I'm down. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. But I know that there's a musical presentation that we have. If Denzon wants us to show this and kind of use this to wrap up day one. But before we go into that, if there's anything you guys want to say, or I don't know how long it runs, but you know, if you want to say before or after, just let me know.
I'll just go ahead and say mine now. Just want to thank everyone that joined us today. We want to again give a shout out to the Bunnell Foundation and to Jamie, who has been so amazing. I mean, we couldn't have done this without
Good job,
him.
Jamie. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so thank you, Jamie, and just thank everyone that supported and that helped sponsored this event. And we are going to be back tomorrow. If you weren't able to join us today, we'll be right here at 10 in the morning, and I am just so excited.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of our individuals that registered had to work today, but they'll be with us tomorrow. So we're looking to have another great day. Thank you so much, April.
You're welcome. I totally enjoyed this.
Yes,
I really did.
thank you so much.
Great way to spend a Friday afternoon, and you know, even though your topic was about you know, globalization
Right.
matters, you know, it was just so easy and natural for me to even tie in the work that I do at Ori Georgetown Tech and the
Right.
work that I do with the network, because that's all global as well. I mean, you never know, someone may graduate from the college and one day step into the shoes of some of the people that we've talked to today, French teacher, US diplomat, who knows what will happen.
And I'm just so glad that, you know, we were able to do this virtually, because this is just the beginning of a lot of things that's going to be done virtually. So at first, I think Denzel and I were a little nervous, but as the day started to go by, it just worked out so smooth. And
Yes.
there go Jamie. Y'all see that handsome face there?
Jamie is our tech guru. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. Yes, so that's all I wanted to say. Denzel, you have anything you want to say? Jerica? Is Jerica still
No,
there?
Jerica had to go into another room real fast, but
Okay.
like you said, we are here tomorrow, beginning at 10 o'clock, and tomorrow is equally as interesting as today, where we will be discussing, you know, the Middle East. We have a young man joining us who taught for 5 years in Abu Dhabi. We will also have a presentation on worldwide consumerism and the effects that it has on nations such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is located in Central Africa. And our keynote speaker again tomorrow will be Dr. Paula Trackman. She is the Dean of Graduate Admissions of the Graduate School at MUSC. She is a virologist by training. And so again, she will be here to speak on the nature of viruses and, you know, just what in the world is going on with this COVID-19 and how did it become so? So we have a wealth of information coming tomorrow. And if we want to close this out by presenting a short musical presentation, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen here.
You gonna show it?
Unless you already had it up, Miss April.
Oh no, I'm trying to boot it up, but if you have it, go ahead and launch it. Yeah, that's good.
Let me see.
I think we're having a little technical difficulty. He's coming.
Okay.
April, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then,
I don't know if there's supposed to be sound with it or not, but I don't hear anything.
Yes. So I'm sorry. I thought we're gonna try this again to see if it will play.
Raise your hand.
There we go.
Okay.
They can't stand you because you royalty. They can't break you because you quality. Made in Africa, you are quality. 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 They can't break you because you quality. 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 They can't take you because you quality. 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 They can't break you because you quality. 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 Strong vibranium to quality. My ancestors put in work. You made me blind to what I'm worth. What you worth. You point out creases in my shirt. And still I'm swagging in this dirt. See, I'm fine, but looking dark. Take down billboards in across Africa. I've seen white Jesus in my church. I know my God right from the start. See, I just came back from Ghana, and I want to share this dance that everyone was doing over there. QB tried to show me how to do it. He sat me down in this place, and he said to me, nobody wanna see you rising, and when they do, they don't even like it. They just wanna see you deep in crisis. Drive us off, you don't need a license. All of her, she can even ride it. Go ahead, move your feet just like this. Then he showed me the latest. We walk over them haters. Now what you do, man, that's so dope. Now watch me do my zonto. Now watch me do my zonto. Now watch me do my zonto. We walk over the haters. Now what you do, man, that's so dope. We walk over the haters. Now what you do, man, you wanna learn how to do this. So I'ma take you right through this. I don't do dance system movement. So when you jump on the floor, better use it. First step is a step. You can move to the right, to the left. You can even freestyle with a step. Put your hands in the air, did you red? So go. Twist your fingers, you can wave and say hello, low. Make a fist and you can hit them with that blow. No balance, that's how you do so. Let me see you go. You could be talking this. Nobody wanna see you rising, and when they do, they don't even like it. They just wanna see you deep in crisis. Drive us off, they don't need a license. All of her, she can even ride it. Go ahead, move your feet just like this. Then he showed me the latest. We walk over them haters. Now what you do, man, that's so dope. Now watch me do my zonto.
That's the craft of the beat.
Original Mr. Flavor. Every day na party, every day na jolly. Oh, you move your body. No time for story. Where my woman? We supposed to party. No time to check time. Everybody shake it. Oh, your mama, oh, your sister, oh, my baby, time to party. Oh, your mama, oh, your sister, oh, my baby, time to party. Oh, Shankity, I like it when you do sharp. Shankity, I like it. Wow,
I buy side it, I say one candy, Max you lash your bomb. I buy side it, I say one candy, Max you lash your bomb.
I be no register, for Iba inside it. I get me iron, for Doka inside it. We go begin the rally, the campaign, the vote, election inside it. The baby not ready for God and the vote, I get her inside it.
I buy side it, I say one candy, Max you lash your bomb.
I buy side I say one Sunday, Max you lash your bomb. Me go to bar, I buy side Mambo to Mawa, Chagada di Bodo, Adokande, Akika score loba. I damn for me a joker. You are me tawa mobile left the Belena de Ashoba.
I totally enjoyed that. That's some good workout music.
I hope
I said I want that soundtrack.
I know, Denzon, you have to provide us with that. I was here vibing, yeah, a little bit more, work up a little sweat. Yeah.
I got you.
So maybe we'll have the next one we'll have like a Zoom party with the different music. Just
I like that idea.
Help us with that.
Maybe some of the youth that are involved can show us how to do some of those dances. How about that? Yeah. I love it. This was great, y'all. Thank you for including me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Denzon.
Yes, ma'am. Kudos to you, Ms. Chapman. Kudos to you, Ms. Garner. It was awesome. And I reckon hopefully we will see everyone back here tomorrow at 10 a.m.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye. Bye, Jamie.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.